What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? How we doing? Broken Stoic here with the crew for the first ever Campfire event hosted by the Hero's Journey. We are here to talk with the man, the myth, the legend, Jeff Butler and Ozuri. In addition to that, we have the server devs themselves, Aporia and Catapultum. Not to mention our boy, Variety Void, the pet cuck master himself. You're welcome for that, Void. At any rate, I'd like to go over a couple of little things real quick with everybody. Thank you so much for the follows and the subs. Much appreciated. I love you all. You guys are all great. Absolutely amazing folks. I need you to know a couple of things up front. So I have shut down the notifications. Typically, I have a lot of little channel claims and things that you can claim in my channel. However, those things have all been turned off for the duration of the stream, just to make things flow, make things run easy. So Cendrix, thank you so much with the raid. In addition to that, I'd like to keep things respectful. Please respect the time and the fact that these guys are taking time out of their day to come and talk to us. So let's keep the chat pro-social, constructive, and keep the trolling down to a low, medium level. Save that for me when I'm streaming throughout the week. You know what I mean? Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and have these guys introduce themselves. If you want to start off with Variety Void, and then we can go from left to right across the screen.
Oh my God, here we go. What's up, guys? I'm Variety Void. Some of you guys know me. Some of you guys already know me, I guess. Some of you don't. But yeah, I guess I'm the stream team lead for EverQuest Heroes Journey. Yeah, I played EverQuest for a little while now. I guess I'm the resident pet cuck master, these guys are calling me. But yeah, happy to be here.
Oh boy. So I'm going to give him a little more than that because he deserves a little more than that. So Variety Void, just off streaming the Hero's Journey, got his partnership with Twitch and then started the stream team and has since grown it to a wonderful, wonderful thing. So Vivi, you're the man. I'm Aporia. I am one of the devs here behind the Hero's Journey, and it's been an absolute whirlwind and pleasure being able to do this with Cata. So incredibly excited for tonight, and just for all of you being here. Thank you. Like, genuinely, thank you all so much for being here and for playing this. We love you guys.
My name is Ozuri. I worked on EverQuest from 1999 until 2004 or so. I was an EQ beta player before that and played all the way through. I've now spent the last 25 years in the video game industry at various positions, including SOE, but also at Capcom and Namco and a bunch of other places like that. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, Zach, you totally left out the fact that you brought EQ literally to every country that didn't have it when it originally launched. So all the countries that are out there that got to eventually enjoy EQ was through Zach and all of his efforts. Thanks for having me, guys. My name is Jeff Butler. I had the honor of being the first lead GM for EverQuest, the first customer service manager for the game, and then the second producer. I got to launch Ruins of Kunark and completely do Scars of Velious and Shadows of Luckland from end to end, and plan and get Planes of Power in the pipe before I left with Brad, the famous Brad McQuaid, to co-found Sigil Games Online and make Vanguard Saga of Heroes for Microsoft, which amazingly enough ended up becoming a Sony Online Entertainment product. I got to work on tons of stuff over the years, eventually brought the idea for EverQuest Next to Sony Online Entertainment. A shame that it didn't ship because EQ Next could have been a next generation MMO. It was an amazing body of ideas in one product if it had been able to see the light of day. And now I'm working on my own project with Zack, actually, which at some point in time in the future, maybe we'll get a chance to talk about. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I didn't know I would have to introduce myself. I'm just some nerd who started hacking on this project, and it's turned out way bigger than I expected.
I'll go ahead and do Cata's introduction. So this is Cata. He's a little froggy on your screen. He's fantastic. He undersells himself all the time. Basically, Cata is the person who brought all of the vision to life, and telling me all the wonderful ways in which I'm wrong when I try to do something. But he is the reason that a lot of the systems that you are enjoying and playing on are in place.
And I'll say further that the Hero's Journey developers are the reasons why Ozuri and I are here tonight. This is an absolutely incredible experience. People who've worked on the game in the past they're blown away by the quality of this rule set and how the server is run. I consider it official EverQuest.
And it looks like we're about to start into an ad. So once that ad rolls, it's going to be a 3-minute ad, and we will be right back with you to start the interview off. Thank you so much, guys.
I hope it's an ad that it's time to slay the dragon.
That would be amazing. That would be something else.
Have you seen that? You know what he's referencing? There was a marketing campaign that was a YouTube. I'll find it on YouTube. I'll send it to you. It was where some ladies are in a bar.
There you go. So while these guys are stuck in ads here, what are you guys all doing tonight? Are you guys all hyped? Having Jeff Butler, Ozuri, Cata Aporia, old Variety Void here at your beck and call?
Well, I mean, I don't know who you're talking to. There's only like 600 people listening right now.
We're four people short of 600, okay? Don't you overshoot this, okay?
No.
The night is just starting. Come on.
I just texted a couple people, Come on.
What do you mean? I thought, this isn't over already? I thought, I got my viewership numbers. Let's go.
Thank you, everyone.
See you all next time.
That's funny.
A couple of people have, said thanks in the chat as we've been talking. And I have to say, it's not thanks for me. Thanks go to you. Look, without the critical mass and the incredible players that came forward to play EverQuest and Vanguard and Landmark back in the day, where would any of us be? Right? I mean, it's only by virtue of the fact that people accepted the experience and the entertainment that we were trying to provide and fell in love with it as we did. That's why we're here. Thanks goes to them.
Yeah,
and humble.
Guys, just so you know, it does suck that we have to play these ads. Twitch unfortunately makes me play these ads. I play the bare minimum it allows me to. And if we don't play ads, then you all get pre-rolls. And then Twitch has actually recently started playing ads in the middle, even after pre-rolls. So in my mind, that sucks far worse than 3 minutes of ads once an hour. And hopefully, you don't have to see any of that stuff. And I see actually everybody's come back. So, guys, let's get into it. Jeff,
all right.
Aporia. I don't know if we want to start with the introduction to the server and what got us rolling on the server, or if we want to start right off with Jeff and, why are you playing on the THJ? What do you love so much about this great server?
So I would actually like to start because I want to say something about Hero's Journey EMU that everyone should be aware of. Every single person who's playing the rule set, and that is that the idea of a triple classed character, which is the fundamental core of this rule set, that is canonically accurate. So the primary character on the cover of the box, Firiona Vie, is triple classed canonically. No joke. We never talked about it because we never shipped a triple class expansion, but it is something that we talked about. She was a paladin, wizard, ranger.
I just think that's so
Paladin,
cool.
Paladin, wizard, ranger.
Yep.
And you'll note that like when she appeared at events like the Best of the Best, that she used paladin and wizard spells as part of her entrance and as part of her, like that was part of her canonical presentation. And the people who played her in those tournaments and when she made appearances on the Stormhammer server and some of the other things, they played her that way.
The very first quests that involved her, she was a paladin and had forgotten her, kind of lost her memories. And I was the person who played her. I wrote the lore behind Firiona Vie, named her, and put her out there. And she was originally wandering around in the world as a paladin.
That's amazing. What did you like draw inspiration from anything to create her, or is it all just, something you came up with?
In the case of her character, Keith Parkinson had done such an amazing job of creating an iconic character on the box. There's more story behind that I'd love to go into later, but when the original development team was queried about the status of the character, they just said, well, she really doesn't have any lore written around her. And so, I asked, can I go? And they were like, yeah, just go crazy. Take over, write her backstory and lore, and dive in. Her original name was Stariel Elizarain, but no one had ever heard it. The name was unpublished. So we flushed that name down the toilet, named her Firiona Vie, and immediately started focusing on the dynamic quests that were associated with her and her horse and all sorts of other stuff. Just writing her story piece by piece as we move forward. I mean, we had a whole dynamic quest team that were doing nothing but writing stories that we could enact as guides and dynamic quest actors.
Holy smokes. For the longest time, I just thought she was like an IP character on the front of the box.
Yep, not gonna lie. Yep.
No, she's a real character.
A living human being, actually, which I'm happy to tell the story of how we actually found the real Firiona Vie later on.
Okay, awesome. Would you like to get into maybe what got you into EverQuest and maybe where you were before you even got into EverQuest? What led up to your career?
So, we could start at the very beginning. Ultimately, I'd credit my dad sitting me down when I was 5 years old, and he handed me a copy of The Hobbit and said, "Hey, this is a book you'd really enjoy." And I opened the book and I was like, Dad, I don't think I can read it. I'm only 5, right? This book is pretty complicated. He was like, "Oh, you want to learn how to read? I'll teach you." And my dad and I was pretty cerebral, and he and I had a rather distant relationship up until that point. He taught me how to read. No joke, literally taught me how to read before I got into school. And, I'm halfway through The Hobbit and the hook was sunk. I read The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. Ultimately, it's the reason why I'm here today. My relationship with my father improved incredibly because he and I could go to the library after work every day and, grab books. He'd recommend stuff to me. I'd, fell in love with science fiction. I read, my first science fiction was Robert Heinlein's Starship Troopers. Between Lord of the Rings and Starship Troopers, my mind exploded into these amazing realms of fantasy and imagination. Then when I was 10 years old, I found Dungeons and Dragons in 1976, and I was just gone. At that point, And from that point forward, I lived to be a GM, to create content for people, and the opportunity to, many years later, open up a gaming store, bring people into my store for in-store gaming, cyber cafe, all sorts of other crazy stuff. We had a few stores down in the Tampa, Florida area. Magic the Gathering launched, incredibly popular, alongside Warhammer and D&D, and then so I started playing Ultima Online. Thought it was going to be UO, a Dungeons and Dragons version. Ended up being a very different game. But then I heard about EverQuest. EverQuest really did seem like a Dungeons and Dragons style persistent world. I ended up being one of the first 32 people led into EQ beta, and then ultimately the highest level player in the world. I think I dinged 20 first, 30 first. I became the fourth guide and started helping organize the guide program, make rules, make sure that that Variant at the time didn't get sued by having a volunteer workforce and all the sort of other stuff. And that's how I became the lead GM. It's what got my foot in the door, basically, because I made friends with the development team as the highest level player in the world.
That's crazy. I got to ask you one side tangent here, though. What Warhammer army did you play?
Most frequently, Space Wolves.
My dog. Love Space Wolves.
Yep, Space Wolves are amazing.
I found EverQuest through somewhat by happenstance. A guy named Ralph Koster, who went by Designer Dragon, was the creative director on Ultima Online. He ran a MUD that I was a player on when I was in high school. I lived in Japan as an exchange student, and I played on his MUD and was a world builder on that MUD. And when I got out of high school, I thought, well, I want to go work in the video game industry. And I said, hey, can I come have a job working for you at Origin on UO? And he said, no. And I was like, oh, okay. He said, but I know these guys in San Diego who are trying to do this wackadoo thing, and I'll put in a word, and maybe they'll let you in, maybe they won't. And I got invited into the beta program. Ultimately became a guide, a fairly outspoken one, and a leader in the guide program. And through a series of sort of funny events, ended up being asked to come down to the headquarters there in San Diego. And they said, look, we'd really like to hire you. And I said, well, I was a speechwriter at the time. I had a different career. And they said, we'd like to hire you. And I said, it's a very different career than I was really planning. And they said, yeah, but
he's talking about my wife right now, who hired him. Yeah. She was my girlfriend at the time. She's now my wife, and she's sitting here listening, laughing behind me.
Yeah. So I was a bit of a troublemaker, is the part that I'm leaving out. I had caused a bit of a commotion and some hubbub. Some people had changed some rules that I didn't like, and I maybe led a walkout of the entire guide program and a strike.
Jesus.
And so they didn't exactly love me very much at that time. And so they were like, look, instead of criticizing from the outside, why don't you come do something about it? We know you care about this game. Come prove it. Put your money where your mouth is. And a week later, I started.
My God.
That's incredible.
Do you recall, or are you willing to talk about what your walkout was over?
Yeah, sure. I can talk about that. Jeff and his wife had gone on a much deserved vacation for the very first time since the game had launched. They had been working themselves to the literal bone. And for the very first time, they decided to take a vacation, and they'd gone away, and they left someone else in charge. And that person decided that the absence of Jeff and Michelle at that time was a perfect opportunity to change all of the rules about how the guide program worked and the policies and procedures that we were to follow, without consulting with anyone, and just declared that that was what it was going to be. And I took exception to that.
Rightfully so.
Understandably so, yeah.
And so Jeff and Michelle, after we led the walkout, Jeff and Michelle, Smed called them and asked them to come back from their vacation. And so they flew back in order to put it all back together. It was a bit of a disaster, but they did. They not only fixed it, they made it better than it was, which was a real that was sort of a theme for both of them. They really cared about the guides.
Yeah, and I mean, Zack was not wrong for what he did. It was warranted.
So yeah, I came on as a GM, and then I was quickly promoted to lead GM, and then Smed came down to the pit one day and said, I'm looking for someone to help set up EverQuest servers in Korea. We had licensed the product to NCSoft in Korea, and they said, we need somebody to go who knows the game to go set it all up. And he just asked all of the leads on the floor who has a passport, and there were 2 or 3 of us, and the other 2 people had kids. And that's how I got to be the guy who went and traveled around the world setting up EverQuest all over the planet.
Well, not to mention the fact that he speaks just about every language that you might encounter traveling, to the major areas of the world, including Korean. So,
holy smokes!
And that's why I hired him later on to come work with me at Sigil Games Online as my business development manager, because he speaks Japanese fluently, every language in India, Korean, Russian, French, and the list continues from there.
That's insane.
At what point did you guys become friends? Like, he got hired on.
That's a great question. Because we weren't friends in the beginning. He was way he outranked me 6 ways to Sunday, and he was kind of a scary person, if I'm being honest, at that time. He was brash and a little bit
who is scary,
right? So yeah, it was that. He wielded a tremendous amount of influence within the organization, and it was basically his product. And so I knew Michelle, and through her I knew him, but really at quite some distance. And it wasn't really until after he had left to go start Sigil that we really became friends, because we started playing Phantasy Star Online, and we started playing that together. And that was just the genesis of 25 years of playing online games together. We played Anarchy Online together. We played Dark Age of Camelot at some point. We played Guild Wars. We played, Star Wars Galaxies, all the SWTOR, you name it. We've played those games to maximum level together.
Yep.
That's really awesome. I love this sort of grassroots story.
I was the very first level 200 nanotech in Anarchy Online. Jeff and I played the shit out of all those games.
But were you in Aatrox though?
No.
No,
of course not. I needed to land those spells. You Aatrox, you can't land anything.
Oh, but man, I could swarm like nobody's business.
That's true.
So wild tangent then. I guess either one of you, I'm curious what your favorite MMO that you weren't involved in is.
Ooh.
World of Warcraft has to sit near the top of that list. The master class that was the crafting of that game was really second to none. They really took our lunch money in a way that we kind of deserved.
Absolutely the case. There are many MMOs out there that I love, but I think Zach and I and the largest body of friends that I could point to spent the most amount of time in World of Warcraft, in and out of it, coming back for each expansion. It was a great polished version of the work that we had started in EverQuest. There are a lot of things about it that I would change, particularly nowadays, but it takes the cake for us up until this point.
And I will just add, I thought Dark Age of Camelot was a particularly well-crafted experience. I thought that, in particular, their PvP was really fun. I played on the Mordred server and was the very first Realm Rank 10 player in the world. I loved that game. I loved it. It was such a great implementation.
But truthfully, he and I have played almost every Master Play multiplayer game together, and the ones that I never fail to consider are the ones that have unfortunately been sunset, like Star Wars Galaxies, Marvel Heroes Online, what ended up being named Marvel Omega in the last days. We had a lot of fun in all those games, and I wish, at the core of my heart, that they'd never needed to be or could have been sunset, because I'd like to be able to continue to log on and play all of them. Vanguard, top of the list there.
I loved Vanguard, and I did not share this with you guys, but I was there on launch day with a crew of people. At the time, I was leading a guild called Ubiquity Gaming, and we played that game 18 hours a day for the first like month. And it was to date one of my favorite MMO experiences. Like it was the most ridiculous thing. And you guys, we may have interacted with one another at some point because of it. There was something in particular that I really loved. I was a psionicist, and I once I found that there were certain abilities that could be used right from the NPCs, the time mage abilities, the percent damage abilities, that was possibly the most fun I've ever had, and I loved everything about it.
You know, I really appreciate that, Aporia.
Yeah,
I can tell you that my very good gaming and co-worker friend Darren McPherson created a lot of those character classes, and they were absolutely brilliant. If you had the opportunity to see what Vanguard could have ultimately been, what we had planned, if
it was such an amazing promise.
Could have been amazing. It's unfortunate that we can't still play it today outside of an unfortunately fairly under resourced EMU, because they're missing so much of the core code of the game.
Did you know that Marvel Omega also has a emulated server?
I do, actually. I just found that out very recently, and unfortunately, I can't participate in it because of Hero's Journey.
That's a good problem to have.
Well, yeah, somebody needs his AA.
I personally think I would give my left kidney to have launch day EQ2 back.
Launch day EQ2, all I did was run around and write my name on things.
I lagged out. I couldn't run the game.
I died as a bard, went as an exile for a little while, PvP'd, eventually quit because everybody quit because they were getting PvP'd all the time. Yeah. But in other news, so speaking of PvP, Osuri, you were the lead GM of a PvP server.
Yeah, when I came on, my first server that they gave me was Kunark, and I did a decent job there, I think. And they decided that one of the guy who had been on the PvP server prior to me was transferring onto the development team. And the PvP servers, Ralph in particular, was notoriously difficult. It was a bit of we'll call it a Wild West frontier. And notoriously difficult to manage, especially if you weren't really deep in the game, if you didn't really understand all of the nitty gritty of it. And so I was sort of tested by Lady DeGarmo, who was the sort of the in-house PvP expert, because DeGarmo played on a PvP server as a player. And so was sort of tapped as the in-house expert on that topic. And so if you were going to be a PvP server GM, DeGarmo had to bless you. And so I went through kind of an apprenticeship of like, here's how all of this works and here's how these servers operate. And then they said, okay, now fix it. Make it less chaotic, less toxic, less whatever. And I was given really broad latitude to do so. And supported all the way through both my lead and a guy named Alex, as well as through the customer service manager, Michelle, and all of the folks up the chain. Everybody had my back, which felt really good. And it allowed me to sort of start to implement substantive change that tried to really clean the server up from its, I will call it, its most unfortunate tendencies vis-a-vis toxicity specifically. So I was on that server for a long time, and then was promoted to the head of all of the PvP servers, as well as given a bunch of other ones. And sort of as my remit continued to grow, it always included all of the PvP servers, including Sullen when it launched.
And what great event occurred during your watch, and what kind of what went into that?
That we're presumably talking about the sleeper event, and when the folks on the server, when basically I had to reset the zone and kill the sleeper as a GM, which was literally the last thing I ever wanted to do. It's like maybe the worst thing, because I knew it was going to be the most heavily scrutinized thing that had ever occurred on the server, and maybe in the history of that of any of those servers. And so it was a crazy time. People were really trying to do some incredibly powerful things, and it resulted in some very, very heated emotions and frankly inappropriate behavior from wild numbers of people. I had after that event, and I don't know if people don't know what the event was, a bunch of players on Ralosek attempted to kill the sleeper, and it was a big deal. It had never been done on that server in that way. And as a result of some folks that were participant not playing by the rules, they were cheating. They were healing from an exploit area, from a place that the sleeper couldn't touch them. Not everybody was in on it, but enough people were in on it that we felt like it was not fair to the other servers and all of the other players on that server to allow that to be the way that event went down. It cheapened it. It was a once in a lifetime event, and we didn't want it cheapened by a couple of players who otherwise were detracting from the experience for everyone else. If that's going to be a thing that happens, it's got to be a thing that happens and everyone's proud of how they did it. And so we made the call in the moment. Jeff was involved, Michelle was involved, John Smedley was involved, Brad was involved. Everybody was involved in that decision, and unanimously that was the thing that they wanted to do. And so I killed the sleeper, the only GM to ever have done so.
So you were the first sleeper kill on the server, the first and the only.
Yeah, nice.
I was the first sleeper kill on the server.
Congratulations.
When you target a mob and /kill it, like, man, your heart just stops. It was a whole thing, because
it didn't
the thing you have to remember.
So the sleeper didn't actually the sleeper respawned.
It respawned.
And the server was able to move forward, and I'm sure they eventually killed it.
They did. It was within a day or two. It was very shortly thereafter.
That must have been absolutely wild. All eyes on the situation, all these people who are involved, all the people who I'm sure have opinions after the fact, the sort of all the big bosses and everything. It sounds like you had some really great support and they were behind you 100%, which is really great. That's not necessarily something typical in a lot of careers these days, but that's truly awesome.
It was the right thing. And the reason I had all of that support is because it was there was no ambiguity about what the right course of action was here. It was crystal clear. We had evidence of the cheating. We had the evidence of exploitation. We saw it happening in real time. We saw the chat of the people who were doing it, and they knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing was wrong. Their guildmates knew that what they were doing was wrong. Like, it was clear as day, but what was actually happening. And so the course there was really quite clear. The thing that was not as great is, afterwards I had some jerk showed up at my mom's house to harass me. Now, I don't live with my mom. She lives in another state, but they found her name in the phone book. And it was back in the days when we had phone books, but people showed up at her house.
Hold on 1 second. Guys, a phone book is a big book full of white and yellow pages in which they used to put numbers into them where you could find other people's numbers. Okay, go ahead. Just wanted to.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what that is.
People used to have phones in their homes, and at my grandmother's house, this phone sitting on the wall, it would ring, and you pick it up, and it had a dial on it. It didn't have numbers, and people would talk through the handset. It was amazing.
Yeah, so I got a tremendous amount of grief. During my time at SOE, I had my tires slashed, all 4 tires slashed at least twice. I got stalked. It was a hard time. We had a bodyguard that would travel with us to fanfares because of the threats we got. I had a lady that passed out photos of me with my car and my license plate that said that the world would be better without me in it. Photos of me. And she passed it out in the parking lot at an EverQuest fanfare. No shit.
And
Wow.
the thing is, I mean, obviously that's crazy. All that stuff is reprehensible. But the fact of the matter is, EverQuest evoked emotion in people as a form of entertainment. And when you poked their form of entertainment, when you nerfed their druid or whatever the case may be, you received an emotional response. I got some amazing emotional responses over the years, both positive and negative. And even the negative ones, I tried to focus on how powerful those emotions were, and the fact that being able to evoke powerful emotions in people is a form of a tip of the hat to the entertainment value of what it is you're creating.
Did people like take that in? Because that is a really important point to make, essentially, that you've created this world, this space in which people care and love it so much that they had, in this particular circumstance, a sort of vitriol response to a situation. But overall, by and large, did people, admin, devs, understand that or take that in that way?
It was really driven largely by Jeff and by there were other leaders in the company, but Jeff sat in a unique position of reorienting people often around that topic, really around the player experience. It was one of his master abilities as the producer of that product, was to help everyone else connect their work to the passion that is being elicited in the player. So that when you would get in your head about, I'm being harassed in this way, or this guy's cheating, or that's bad, or this is good, he would just reorient you around, look, people care. They care more than you possibly can understand about this thing. The reason they're angry, the reason they're sending you dick pics or photos of poop in their toilet or whatever it is because they're mad about something, is because they're passionate about it. They care a lot. And so if you can look past the inappropriate expression of that care and look at what is the underlying emotion, tap into that for your motivation to continue forward and to continue to deal with this stuff. And it was a constant source. He was a constant source of reorientation for all of the staff, everybody.
For every time that there was a negative, there was a positive. As I've been watching the chat roll by, the people who met their loved ones in game, the people who
got married, or
who got married through contacts that they made in the game. I got a letter from a gentleman who was in the U.S. Army and had his legs amputated from wounds that he took in combat, and he said, I was laying there in the hospital bed thinking that I didn't want to go on with my life. And, I was a runner before this injury. And now that I'm playing EverQuest, someone gave me a laptop while I was convalescing. And he said, there's something about the game that you may not be aware of. He said, when I run across the field in the Karanas, my brain feels like I'm running in real life. He said, it's been a life-changing experience for me to get back into this feeling of power and control over my own body again. And, he was like, for what it's worth, just wanted to let you know. And, I used to carry his email around occasionally to people who were upset that players were unhappy about X, Y, or Z, and say, look, for every player who's vocal about being upset about something, there's a player whose life has been changed by this experience. Sometimes those people aren't vocal, but remember that they're there. Remember that all these people, the dissatisfied included, are the reasons why we're doing our job.
And I mean, you can even read in the Twitch chat. I'm just reading. These people are talking about my parents met in EQ. I met my wife in EQ. Like, there's stories and stories, and there's 600 stories scrolling by of people whose lives were changed as a result of this game.
I met some of my best friends in this game.
Think about what that impact is. Think about what the trajectory, like, my life has taken the trajectory, not just mine, but all of these people. It was so impactful and humbling to be a part of.
Very true.
I think we just heard from Jeff, that was a pretty amazing letter that he got. Can you remember specifically like a letter, a picture, like what was the coolest thing anybody ever sent to you, Ozuri?
Oh man. I mean, the heinous ones are the ones that stick in your mind when you first think of it. But I want to put those aside and just think of the good ones. We got to participate in a Make-A-Wish situation for a young man who we memorialized in the game, and that was so impactful to me. It was it stuck with Ryan was his name, and I'll never forget him. And those kinds of things were really impactful. We have funny stories too. I'll tell the story about the floating point variable problems and some of that stuff. But ultimately, the stories are kind of endless. They just continue to. There's so many people whose lives were affected by this game. So many people.
It's really is a beautiful thing. I mean, I think some of the really inspiring things I've seen as a streamer, and maybe Void can speak to this too, just streaming THJ and the amount of people who have reconnected with their kids, reconnected with family members. Their dad used to play EverQuest, and they're now playing THJ as a way to bring back those feels of when their dad was around, or maybe they're playing with their dad, or just the amount of stories that I've heard as a streamer, people coming in my stream and just shouting out how amazing this server is, how much it's brought people back together. I mean, the two of you speak to this as well, and that's that you guys have come to THJ. You love what it's created, the dynamic sort of 3-class mechanism that Aporia and Cata have created. And look at all these. We have 643 people currently in this stream who are watching and listening to these stories that you guys are telling. I mean, I think it's touched so many people, and so many more than even what we have in here. It's just a beautiful thing.
I got a story kind of relative to that too, talking about streaming and people reuniting because of the game. There's 2 guys in my chat who had been talking in my chat for some time that finally realized that they were friends. One of them was a groomsman at the other's wedding, and they didn't even realize it was them until one of them made an offhand comment talking about something, and they were both like, "Holy shit, that's you! I haven't talked to you in 15 years."
Yep.
That's fucking awesome. That's amazing to see and just have that kind of interaction with people.
And I kind of want to share something here. So one of the reasons that we made this, in the beginning, right? You talk about emotional response. You talk about how much, this game can mean, the positive memories and feelings that you have, and the times that you spent, right? The memories you made with other people. Getting older, growing up, having less time and more responsibilities. One of the primary motivations for me is that I wanted an EverQuest that I could play as an adult and still have the same feelings, the same joy, but just in a way that, I don't have to look for a group for hours. I don't have to worry about running back and getting my corpse, and losing an entire day of play. I want to experience the joy, right? Without those things that we try not to remember. And
I tell my current designers at my company all the time how punishing the original game was. And they're like, come on, we've played Elden Ring, we've played Dark Souls Saga, how punishing could EverQuest have been? And, I laugh and say, look, EverQuest in its classic form, I played 14 to 16 hours a day for more than 6 months straight to be the highest level player in the world. And had there been more than 1,000 people in beta, I certainly wouldn't have been investing enough time to be at the pinnacle of leveling. Somebody would have blown past me. But what a punishing game it was that we originally shipped. A kick in the nuts, as it were. And then before you got your breath back, another brutal, merciless kick in the nuts.
For sure. And it's something that we're cognizant of, even through every decision that we continue to make as we, look forward for what it is that we're trying to design into and the new spaces that we're trying to unlock for people. It's something that it's difficult to be mindful of and balance it in such a way where everything isn't trivial, but yet it's not so punishing. And I think we've struck a really good balance. And I think, it's important for us that the players know that moving forward, that's a core design concept for us. Like, we're not going to be getting away from that. We're going to find ways to put some challenges in there, and we will continue to do that. But at the core of it, like, this is all of us to get together, to have fun, to build new memories, and in a way that makes sense for today.
Don't worry, Aporia will keep me under control.
That's awesome. So many questions are going by in chat. I apologize. I haven't answered any of them. We could literally spend easily the next couple of hours in the stream asking stuff. If people want to understand how things are pronounced, I've seen a bunch of questions about that go by. It's Tunare, Kinos,
Lucklin, Kinos,
Lucklin, Halas, Najana, Solasek, Firiona Vie.
Yeah, I can't think of any other ones that like.
Thank you guys for the validation for Lucklin, by the way. Thank you. Thank you. The guys that both Ozuri and I play with called it Luklin, and I was like, it's Lucklin. And they're like, no, it's Luklin. I was like, no, trust me, it's Lucklin.
Oh,
because they didn't know who we were. We hadn't outed ourselves at that point. We were just playing with some guys, and so they were like, no, it's Looselet, I think is what they said. Like,
yeah.
No.
And so I finally got him to call it Lucklin, and I was like, no, it's Looseland. Damn you.
Okay, so whoever clips that first and posts it to YouTube is going to have the most views of any EQ thing ever.
What do you mean? I'm not letting anybody clip this. This is all mine. No. Interesting one though. Yttrium. So like the gear that is dropped off from Lord Saru. Yes. Is that accurate pronunciation?
I believe so. Yeah.
YTTRIUM. Yttrium.
Yeah. Yakesha.
Yakesha, that's right. Yeah, you're right.
What is the canonical pronunciation of Lord Bob?
Oh my God!
Oh,
Bob.
Yeah, I'm not doing that one.
That's fine. That's fine. We can move on to the names of all the trash in Vexthal. Go.
Yes.
Oh my God.
No, the gates of Discord zones.
Yeah. Yep.
Treza, Velcator, Trachanon, obviously.
Oh, you know what you got? You got me one with the giant Velious zone earlier.
The giant Velious zone.
Velious giant kingdom. Where Tormex. Yep.
Keldrakell.
I've heard it Drackle.
Yeah.
No.
It's Keldrakell.
Keldrakell sounds so much cooler.
Yeah.
And so it's not that I'm like a stickler on pronunciation. It's just that during the early history of EverQuest, I was kind of the person who cataloged all this stuff. There were people on the development team. I'd turn around and there'd be like a pile of paper in the trash can, and I'd be like, "What's all this paper? Like, that looks like there's art in there." I'm like, "Oh my God, there's original artwork. Who put this in the trash can? Like, what on earth is going on?" Like, artwork that we'd never seen before. Like, as we were working on EverQuest expansions, we were hungry for ideas. We were a live team, generally drawn from the player base and the GM crew, elevated and trained to be game designers and developers by the original team, and then by the successors of the team who joined the live team, guys like Jason Polk, Todd Schmidt, et cetera. And, every time I turn around, like, the janitor or an employee who was leaving would like throw a bunch of original stuff away. And sometimes things that we had literally never seen before, monster designs that weren't in the game because we didn't have time. The original team didn't have time to make them. And we took that stuff, and that's what you see in the expansions.
So cool.
That's
just wild.
So, you talked about all the blood, sweat, and tears that went into creating these things and how it's affected other people. What did it take from the staff to make that happen? Right from its initial first step into you stepping away, well, both of you stepping away and then coming back. And how did things change as those steps occurred?
Probably the most amazing thing that I can say about EverQuest was we stood up during the days where developers had the opportunity to share in the profits of the company. It's much less frequent nowadays in the games industry. The WoW developers shared in the profits of the game. The EverQuest developers shared in the profits of the game. And so when we sat down to plan expansions, I didn't have to tell my team that we were going to be working overtime for the game. I sat down with 1, 2, or 3 plans. I went over, look, we could make this number of zones in this amount of time, or if we worked until 10 p.m. for 4 months, we could make this much larger number of zones. If we worked even later, then maybe we could pull off this. I showed them all the numbers. They had all been, many of them had been receiving royalties for the game. And I said, look, if we're going to commit to, let's say, 13 or 16 or 19 zones, it's got to be a team-wide decision. And notably, in every instance that I asked that question for both Kunark, Velious, and Lucklin, the team unanimously said, let's go for plan number 3.
Yeah,
The most number of zones. Let's go for the brass ring. That's what we owe our customers. That's what we want to do. And I was pleased. I had the opportunity to hand out royalty checks to those people. In some cases.
Wait. I want to tell. You're going to skip over this part, and I think this is important.
Go.
Jeff was really diligent about ensuring that the people who participated in the creation of success were thanked personally by him. And so, rather than distributing royalty checks, which were in many cases, they were distributed on a quarterly basis, and in some cases, those quarterly royalty checks to some of those developers were greater than their annual salary. I just want to put that in perspective. It's life-changing amounts of money.
Wow.
Okay. He would hand those checks out in person. He would go up to those developers. He would acknowledge them, thank them for their effort, thank them for the work that they had done, and then hand them the check and watch their faces as they began to weep. Weep. That was the nature of the kind of leader that he was, ultimately understanding that the whole point of this is for the validation to come from customers and for that validation to be shared, not just with a pat on the back and a pizza party, but with something that fucking means something, pardon my French, but with something that means something, which is compensation. And the company stood behind it. John Smedley stood behind it. Brad stood behind it. Jeff stood behind it. And he handed those checks out by hand personally.
Hey,
that's important.
It was an honor to work with those people. Some of the most amazing developers that I've ever had the opportunity to work with. Many of them went on to positions, prominent positions in the games industry that they still retain. Absolutely fantastic group of people. They had their opportunity to get their foot in the door and work on something amazing, and they loved it. Like, we all loved it. That's why we were there.
Man, you guys were.
When royalty checks would come out the next week on the next Monday, the parking lot would have about, 15 or 20 new cars in it. People would buy homes. They would buy apartment buildings that they still now rent out to people. Like, it was life-changing to those people. Life-changing.
That's so cool.
Like, before your time, for sure, and the support that the staff, I'm sure, felt from that, is why you guys have such great relationships to this day, and people went off to do great things. But I don't think they could have done that without, obviously your guys' hard labor and hard work that you guys put into it. Maybe talk about a little bit about the scale of the game and where it was perceived to likely go as opposed to where it ended up.
That's a great question. when the game was about a month away from launch, we were sitting in the conference room. Someone from one of our partner companies had come in and said, "Hey, we want to talk to you about the marketing of the game." And a guy walked up to the whiteboard and he wrote 75,000. He wrote the number 75,000 on it. And he started talking. I was like, "Hey, pardon me, but like, what's that number on the board?" And he said, "Well, our numbers have shown that there will be, across the lifetime of the product, 75,000 people." And I was like, define lifetime of the product. Like, what are you talking about here? He was like, well, and he was speaking as if to a child. He was like, the game will launch in a month, and then over the next 10 plus years, there will be 75,000 people who play it. And I just laughed, and I was like, hold on here. I was like, your number it's wildly off. And he was like, no, our number is correct. Everything, all of our research, all of the sales numbers, the pre-purchases from GameStop, et cetera, they all show that that's going to be the lifetime number, 75K. And I was like, yeah, that's what, it's just totally wrong. I was like, there's more people than that playing Ultima Online already. And this game is going to be the holy grail in comparison to Ultima Online. I said, the PvP switch, the fact that you'll finally be able to play Dungeons and Dragons with your buddies online in a persistent 3D world. No one's ever thought of this. Then that number is going to be blown out the door. And, the truth of the matter is we had 110,000 people log in on the first day. They attempted to log in, I should say. Not all of them were able to log in, but we had 110 on day one. 110K. So 75,000 was a joke. We reached 450,000 players.
Yeah, in the first, yeah.
We had 100,000 concurrent. We brought down the effing internet in San Diego. Literally, we brought the internet in San Diego to a crawl.
And what did they have to do in order to make that work? I mean, you guys were such at the time, I mean, gaming was not considered that huge of a deal. Wasn't that big of a tax on the infrastructure? Were there steps that needed to be taken to meet the new need?
Zach, you should tell that story.
Yeah. So we had bought a bunch of John Smedley had gone out and bought a bunch of high-end internet connection OC3s in order to provide sufficient bandwidth. They'd done the calculations. They knew what it was supposed to be. And we'd gone to our upstream ISP and purchased that internet bandwidth from them. And they said, okay, look, it must be
level 3.
But I wasn't going to name them, but yeah. We bought it. Oh, they're gone. Okay. So we bought it from level 3 and we told them, hey, it's got to be dedicated. It has to be dedicated time. And they were like, oh yeah, for sure. It's going to absolutely be dedicated. No way. We won't sell it to anyone else. At the same time, they had sold that same bandwidth to several other companies, including the state of California, Qualcomm, and Disney, and sold us all the same amount of internet, all on top of one another. And so when we launched on that launch day, it brought the Qualcomm corporate offices. They had the throughput that was just a little less than a 28.8 modem for the whole building, because we had sucked up the entire pipe.
They couldn't even send and receive email.
They couldn't send and receive email. And the lore, and I don't know how true this is, but the lore was that they lost control of a communication satellite as a result.
What year was this?
1999.
Yeah, it's a fact. They lost control of a communication satellite in orbit because of this.
Right. They lost control, but I don't know if they got the control of it back. But the SLAs, the service level agreements that we had with our upstream contractors, were so severe in terms of the penalties for them not having the internet available that level 3 decided that the best way for them to go forward was to dig up the road between Los Angeles and San Diego without permits over the weekend, because the penalties for doing so were less than the penalties from the SLA. And so they laid cable over the weekend, or laid fiber optic over the weekend from LA all the way down to San Diego so that we could have the internet back.
It was the Wild West, my friends.
That is an insane story. That's incredible.
That's
and that's not
absolutely
even the craziest stuff that happened in those days. It was just a really because internet connectivity wasn't really well understood, right? A bunch of nerds say their video game needs, a bunch of OC3s. What do these nerds know? They don't know anything. This has never been done. There's never been an application that required this kind of bandwidth. We broke a lot of things. We broke internet. We broke hard drives. Jeff can tell a story about
We broke routers.
We had a guy who had to came out and built custom router boards. We had hard drives that had to be custom fabricated. Western Digital sent people out to us because we were breaking hard drives and fusing platters and turned the chemical composition of the platters of the hard drives into clay. Like physically change the chemical composition through heat. And you're not supposed to be able to do that.
We had a lot of fun though.
My God. Just real quick, I'm going to take a couple of questions that we saw spin by. One of the questions was, did EverQuest ever have a planned ending?
Ooh,
that's a spectacular question, and the answer is absolutely no. The vision, the original vision keepers for EverQuest, at its core, handed off the custodianship of that quite some time ago, and there was never the conceit that the story would end or that the book would close or that there would be a final chapter. Vishan was never going to come back herself and consume Norrath or anything of that sort. The game and the persistent world was intended to continue on over the course of thousands of years, iterations, eras and ages. If you think about, Lord of the Rings, for example, the Lord of the Rings story ultimately was intended to have an ending, but not in any form that was ever published or publicly revealed until people dug into Tolkien's notes. But there are no notes about the ending of the world of Norrath.
Crazy. What about, let's go around everybody. Favorite expansion in EverQuest? Start with you, Void.
Oh, dude, House of Thule. It's my favorite of all time.
Aporia?
I just want to commend his bravery for coming out and saying House of Thule. That probably took a lot to say.
I'm very open about it with my stream.
we just got done talking about hate mail and people being angry. You just came out with House of Thule. But House of Thule was really cool. My favorite. So that's tough. And I'm going to cheat by giving two answers. So, and this is because of my personal experience and memories, not based on any technical or what was available or anything like that, right? But personal memory. So I distinctly remember running through Plane of Valor in Planes of Power. Okay. And I saw this little gnome Shadow Knight soloing mobs that my entire group was getting wrecked by. And that was the first time where I was just so in awe of an individual character's power. And I looked at that little gnome and I literally stopped running. I just sat there and I remember just typing, wow. And he just replied with a smiley face. And I'm like, that is so awesome. And I sat there and I watched him. I literally sat there watching this guy soloing stuff. And I'm like, this is fantastic. I love everything about this. And then expansion wise, there was a period before I had my son where I decided to go back and play all the old MMOs that I used to play. And I played every AAA launch at a very competitive level for almost a decade. But I never got to do certain things because of my age when I was younger. And I started with a few games pre-EQ and a lot of Korean MMOs that I really liked at the time. So I went back and I was playing these things and went through. I was like, okay, I got to EverQuest and I'm like, okay, I'm going back. I'm giving EQ a real try. And it just so happened to be the launch of the Reign of Fear expansion, which is a more recent expansion. I had so much fun with the group of people that I found and some of the things that they had did, some of the ways in which EverQuest had changed. And a part of that experience bled into the hero's journey, which was the number and the number of AA and the degree to which AA changed a class. I had like 6 bars on my screen completely filled with active AA. It was such a steep learning curve, but I absolutely loved how class defining and how fun it made it feel, right? And then getting to raid with a guild on Vox, doing server first content, server first clears, right? And doing a raid encounter in the arena. That was just, the arena encounter was just incredible. And getting the server first title of Champion of the People, that for me was just the coolest freaking thing, because I never got to do anything like that in EverQuest, right? Because like when I started playing EQ, I was 12 years old. I don't think I ever had a character over level 20. Like I made a new alt almost every day. I spent every day thinking about what type of gear I was going to look for, where I was going to level. Oh no, this has got to be the way. Like, oh no, I remember in my head, I had to have a cleric that wore a robe with a plate helm and a mace because it was the coolest looking character in the game to me.
Aporia, I hate to be this guy, but we got ads starting in 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye. For those of you guys who are still around. So yeah, doesn't it, right? Wait, Cata, how do you put up with him? How do you put up with this?
Battle cleric, let's go.
Aporia, I would like to come back to you as soon as the ad is over in 2 minutes and 40 seconds. But I will say that explains so much. Also, what more do you expect from Mr. Variety Void, the guy who plays Petcock? Come on.
Hey.
House of Thule? Yeah, exactly.
Minion Master.
It's weird because you called it Petcock earlier during the stream. I can pull back the VOD if you'd like. We can check out that bean footage.
I don't think that was
receipts.
Me. Yeah,
the receipts.
I don't think that was me.
The receipts are deep.
Still, Minion Master is like the worst. The worst.
Dude, that's why my extra pet cuck is called Pound Pounder, because somebody else said that, and I was like, it's better than pet cuck, so I'm just gonna say Pound Pounder.
Pound Pounder. Wow, the implication.
Like, there's so many different directions you can go with this if you don't want to go
really?
with classic.
Yeah,
I feel like Pound Pounder is so much worse.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, Pound Pounder is not better. Come on, chat. What is
advanced loot can't happen, unfortunately.
What if we donate enough money to you? Then can it happen?
No.
If only things worked like that.
What if I send you chocolate?
I like chocolate.
Oh, you figured it out. That was it. We were literally just waiting for someone to send us chocolate. Cata, go ahead. You can do it.
I have faith in you. You created pet bags. You can do advanced loot.
Oh, you can do it for sure.
Pet bags are not hard. I'm just gonna bluntly say it. It's a good idea, but it's not actually hard to do.
That was a very good idea. So, Variety, both Zach and I are playing our pet cuck characters. They're the twin daughters of the king of the Vashir. Canonically. Yeah, and so they're identical twins. So I can't say their names because that'll out us. But anyway, if you see two identical Vashir with a royal name, with a royal surname, that's us.
That's good to know. It cracks me up because Broken told me right off the bat. He was like, Void, you're never going to guess what Ozuri and what they're both playing. And I was like, what? And he was like, oh, Petcock. And I'm like, why did you call it that? Now everyone's going to call it that. I'm trying to change the name. And you're like, oh no, Petcock. And I'm like, damn it. Stop it.
On the Discord, someone tried to open a thread in the class theory crafting forum and give it a different name, and I renamed the thread. to the correct name.
That's the best.
So if you would take us under your wing as your apprentices, we would be in your debt.
Absolutely, yeah. Yep. Yep.
Well, guys, it looks like we are back from ads. Aporia, if you'd like to pick up.
I can't just pick up after that. So okay. But yeah, so those were with the question was expansions, and I got all kinds of sidetracked. But
Reign
I
of
feel
Fear.
like that's right, Reign of Fear. But that just like that brings it back to like what is EverQuest and why people love it so much, and the emotional responses that it elicits, and the bonds that you're able to build, and the people you interact with, and the things that you do. Like it's just. I think lots of people love different expansions based on the people that they met during those expansions, to be completely honest with you.
That's actually what I was going to say. My favorite expansion is probably Kunark, but that's because it's a reflection of the game that I was playing. I was part of a guild, shout out Inner Circle on Zegany. I was part of a guild that was raiding really actively, and we got to push a lot of content that I didn't get to play as a player prior to that. And like I got to experience the high end part of the game extensively. And then my job got busy and I couldn't play as much. And so when Velious came around, it was a little bit less. And then when Luckland came around, it was a little bit less. And then when Plains Power came around, a little bit less. And like it just, like my playtime got more and more constrained because I was traveling around trying to, set up servers in all kinds of places. And ultimately then I think Legacy of Ikisha was the last expansion I played, and I was barely playing at that point. But man, I loved the very first Trachanon kill, and fighting through the mushrooms at the very first time, and like we spent all day feigning to try to split the protector off, and like we spent literally 8 hours, everybody just huddled in a room in a corner trying not to get aggro with one cleric camped out so that you could those memories really stick with me. The like overcoming tremendous odds in order to downtrack the very first time. It was really impactful to me. I'll remember it forever.
That's awesome.
I think Plains of Power objectively was probably, in my opinion, was probably the best expansion, but my personal experience was Kunark. I loved Kunark.
Shill. I mean, what? Yeah. So, Jeff Butler, what expansion is your special one?
So, it's really, it's a difficult question because ultimately, while I was working on the game, we got very little opportunity to play. Scars of Velious, I've always loved for a number of reasons, because the development team was able to do stuff with Scars that we had never conceived of before. I got, finally had enough time at work to become personally involved with creating content in Velious. A bunch of the weapons that you see rolling around, like the,
Wait. This is a good story, and he's going to skip past it. And I don't want to skip past that. Okay,
no.
So yeah, no, this is really good. This is a great story. I'm not going to embarrass you, I promise.
No, that's okay. You can embarrass me. I don't care.
Jeff, look, he was a hard leader. Like he pushed the team hard, but it came with he never asked the team to do things that he wasn't willing to do himself. And so when he asked for them to work long hours in order to put content in the game, when you're the producer, you're just sort of waiting for that work to come together, checking on it, making sure it's done, but you're not making any of that content yourself. You have designers and artists and engineers who are doing that. But Jeff didn't want to ask people to work those hours without actually being there. He wasn't going to ask them to work those hours and then go home. That's not how he rolled. And so he taught himself to model, to build art models. And so the Necromancer epic, the Druid epic, the Warrior epic, is that it?
A bunch of the weapons from Velious.
Tri-plated Golden Hacklehammer, a bunch of the primal Velium weapons. Like he did all of those models, not having any experience or expertise in those things. He just built them. He built it, and like those are ultimately the models that shipped. They were not made by an artist. They were made by Jeff.
You made the legendary duck stick?
Nature's Defender.
He did. The duck staff is a pure Jeff. That's a Jeff Butler special. a thing which I tease him about relentlessly still.
So the duck staff was supposed to look cooler than it did. The stick is too thin, and a few other things got messed up in implementation. But the funny thing is, a lot of those weapons, some of which I really ended up liking, like Nature's Defender, for example, I drew those when I was a kid. I still have the original art.
It's one of my favorite weapons in the game. That's actually awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah, fun times. You know, Milo Cooper, the guy who originally modeled the player characters, took me aside. I was struggling with modeling. He took me aside and said, "Hey, come in on Saturday. You know, we had a Saturday off. He was like, come in on Saturday and I'll teach you how to model." He was like, "You've got the rudiments of it, but you're still, you need to understand how to visualize things in 3D." And so 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, I showed up. He was there. He sat down with me and laid it down. And he said, "Now I want you to start modeling helmets." He's like, "I got all these helmets that I need to model." And I was like, "Dude, I'm not ready." He's like, "No, you are ready. I'm telling you, I'm the arbiter of these things," right? He was the person who did all the models in EverQuest. And so I was able to make tons of cool helmets like the Barbarian, like the helmet of Ralph Koster, the thing that the Avatar of War wears around. I modeled that. Patrick Ho concepted all those helmets for me. And, you know, I was able to put a bunch of weapons in Velious that the development team, well, we didn't have the resources to make that otherwise. And I was able to sit there, unlike a typical producer who sits around with their thumb in their behind, I was able to contribute. That makes it my favorite personal expansion. You know, I loved Gates of Discord and a number of others, but that's the one that stands out to me.
That's awesome. Cata.
So I'll cheat on here. I think so. So y'all talked a lot about the people that you were playing the game with made a lot of the expansion for you, more so than the actual content itself. I had a similar experience. I think that Omens of War was probably actually my favorite expansion in terms of like how the content was actually implemented. But Dragons of Norrath is always going to be special to me because I had actually quit and got talked into coming back by a friend of mine who to join his guild that he had just started up, which I can't remember the name of to save my life, embarrassingly enough. But shout out to Fedoro if you're out there somewhere. And we went from a standing start to one of the top guilds on Vishen over the course of that expansion, and then fell apart when the expansion ended. But that was a fun run.
That's a wild expansion. I mean, there was so much like craziness and there was so much creep in that expansion that just kind of like blew the lid off from the game. Like it changed so many of the classes. And it really became fun. Classes really started to feel like they were individual classes. You didn't just have your tank and your archetypes so much anymore. It was like a warrior was a warrior because of the tools that it was given. That was a really good expansion.
Did you guys ever say what your first actual like class race combination was in EverQuest when you actually played it? Did anybody ever talk about that?
No, we didn't. I don't think we talked about that, but I'm happy to.
Yeah, let's roll it around.
In my case, I got into Phase 0.5 beta because I had a fiber optic cable modem in 1998 before most people even heard of them. And I created a barbarian warrior named Jalen.
Now that's where Jalen's katana comes from. That's it. That's that character.
Yeah.
It's named after Jeff.
That's so cool.
In my case, I started out as a halfling druid.
Halfling druid, huh?
Interesting.
What drew you to that?
I am 6'6" and 240.
Exploiting on the zone line near Rivervale. That's what drew him to it, I bet.
That's hearsay and inflammatory. That may be true.
You know, I was about to congratulate you because you said you're 6'6". I'm 6'3". football player physique, and I was like, oh man, and I'm playing a gnome. It makes so much sense. I love doing that.
Yep.
But then clearly there's some background story, some cheating going on here.
Nah, I don't know about all of that, but yeah. Halflings had an XP bonus. You made, I think, 5% more XP than everybody else.
That's true.
And I wanted to avail myself of the fast leveling.
Cata Aporia?
Cata, go ahead.
So I have a fun story around this. My first character that I rolled was a high elf enchanter, because I had got like the demo CD or something and read somewhere online that enchanters were cool and they had a pet, so I made an enchanter. And then I lost the account when I transitioned over to like an actual retail account, and made a magician because I didn't know the difference between the two.
That's really funny.
That actually explains a lot. That's amazing. I love that. My first character was a dark elf. That got re-rolled. God knows how many times, but it had to be a dark elf. Because the person that got me into the game was in a guild called Dark Retribution. They were a evil race only RP guild.
Excellent.
And I did not know what that meant when I started playing. I was quickly introduced to it, and just try to condense this story a bit. Basically, I had never played EverQuest before, and I was talking about Final Fantasy in the dugout during an All-Star game. And the pitcher came up to me and basically he's like, knock that talk off. He's like, you want to make fun of you or you want to win the game? And I'm like, all right, get it. I got it. Cool. I won't talk about anything. He comes up to me after the game and he goes, yeah, so if you like Final Fantasy, I've got a game that's even better. I said, oh yeah? He's like, yeah, you're coming over to my house tonight. So I head over to his house and we're hanging out for the first time outside of baseball. And he goes, okay, here it is. He boots up EverQuest on his Walmart Connect dial-up, and he goes, all right, man, get ready. And he was hyping it up so much. I'm like, okay. And I watched him for 6 hours run around on his Dark Elf Warrior, just killing pumas with a Worm Slayer. And it was just so, I thought the game was so cool. I could not wait for him to give me a try. I'm like, dude, let me play. Like, I gotta play. Like, please let me play. And he's like, you're not playing my character. He's like, you wait until I go to bed. He goes to bed at 4:00 in the morning. Okay. I sit down, I go to make my first character, and I'm picking around races, and he looks at me and he goes, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm making my first character. He's like, yeah, but why are you looking at races? I'm like, well, because I want to see what race I want to be. He goes, no, you're a dark elf. And I'm like, well, I think the wood elf's kind of cool. He goes, do you want me to be your friend or not? And I'm like, okay, dark elf it is. And then from that point on, like, every character that I made was a dark elf.
Good choice.
We
Hell
were
yeah.
the childhood trauma being the explanation for why Aporia is the way he is.
Yep. I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone was able to infer that, but thank you.
Blueberry for life. I would just like to point out that someone referenced Aporia's voice sounding like Thor or Pirate Software. Just point that out.
Shout out to Broken Stoic for helping me configure my microphone.
I believe cheating was brought up, and Jeff told me a story about a week and a half ago about his adventures and exploits on Rizlona. And I'm hoping he can tell us a little bit about that.
Rizlona was amazing. One of the guys who worked with me on Vanguard, actually, Darren McPherson, the guy who created the Vanguard Bard and whatnot, reached out and said, hey, you're not going to believe this, but there are time lock progression servers in EQ where you can multi-box. And I was like, yeah, dude, I've been multi-boxing EQ since day one, like 3 computers and 2 laptops all logged in at once. And he was like, no, not that at all. Where you can, like, it's like playing Baldur's Gate. You play your primary character, use a program to log a bunch of other characters in at the same time. There's people like running whole raids. And I was like, come on, that's got to be like a kludgy nightmare. And next thing you know, a month later, I'm running like 12 characters across the world alone, having a blast. And so I think Gates of Discord was the expansion that the server was locked on at the time. We had a blast. Played through to maximum level, got a bunch of characters leveled up, had tons and tons of fun.
And
I don't recall any cheating.
oh, okay.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Give me a hint.
Oh, I just wasn't sure if maybe you were running more than one character.
Well, in the case of Rizlona, you were allowed to run all those characters.
Oh, fair.
Yeah.
Well, it was a special
it
rule
was
set.
Yeah, it's a multi-box approved server.
Ah,
And
yes.
So, yeah, it could be one person running a 40-person raid, or in my case, one person running 2 full groups. So I'd run 2 groups, and my buddy Darren would run 2 groups. Legit.
Yeah, that's the only downside of being a developer on a. You can't skirt the rules because you're very visible. Everybody, they know that when you're playing. Like, you can't. You've got to follow all the rules all the time.
Very much so.
You serve as an example. If you don't follow the rules, other people won't.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Void. No.
What?
Someone pointed out that I skipped you for your class too, by the way.
Oh, did I not answer that?
I don't think so.
Oh no. Oh, okay. Yeah, my first character was a barbarian rogue named Sexy Barb.
Nice.
It's funny because it was actually it was a joke. It was my older brother's best friend at the time, and we had just installed EverQuest and we couldn't think of a character name. So he made a character. It was just a male barbarian named Sexy Barb, and we stuck with it. And I remember multiple times there would be GMs that would come and look at it, and you could tell like they were judging on whether or not it was going to be good or bad.
Yeah, on the line.
It was on the line, and we never did anything wrong. So I guess they just let us keep it. And that was me and my brother, we shared it. It was our actual rogue that we kept, I want to say, for 4 or 5 years. But yeah, we never had to change our name or anything.
Yeah, it's the name changes were always the funny ones. I was telling a story the other day about I found a dark, it wasn't a dark elf, but it was a ranger named Drizzt Do'Urden in the game, and I ran up to the guy to change his name, and I was like, look, you can't have a copyrighted name like that. I'm sorry. And you get Drizzt Do'Urden's spelled a bunch of different ways, a bunch of times, all the time. Like, it's a very common name that people try to, sneak past the filter. And so I go up to the guy and I'm like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to change your name. And he says, do me a favor, before you change my name, would you please just check my registration information? And I was like, I don't see why that's relevant, but okay, sure, fine. So I pull it up, and it's Bob Salvatore. It's his
Salvatore?
Yeah, it's Bob.
What? Dude, that's fucking awesome.
Playing. And so he's like, I really appreciate you being so zealous in protecting my intellectual property. And I was like, well, I'll just put a note on your account and we'll never bother you again. You can have the name. Thank you.
Yeah, but I was like, go about your business, Drizzt.
That's awesome.
I'm speechless.
Yeah, it was fun.
We ended up reaching out to him through the game, and he helped us edit the EverQuest books back in the early days.
Oh, wow.
That's fucking wild.
Yeah, we met all kinds of people that play. Like, a lot of sports people played. A lot of like baseball players have a lot of time on the road and in hotels, and so there a lot of like baseball teams played. We had like pro teams. Kurt Schilling got a bunch of people into it. Like, there was a bunch of fairly celebrities and people that played together. It was kind of wild. Vin Diesel and those guys, like all those guys played.
Jacques Villeneuve, the F1 driver, played. Jim Lee, the famous comic book artist, played.
He was an avid player, Jim was.
Yep. That I actually met him because he deleted his character when business got busy. He found that he was playing too much EverQuest and needed to focus more on drawing. So he deleted his paladin. He had, I guess, played on Povar, and he deleted it. He finished the project that he was working on, and I got this email in my bin. It was like, so here's the situation. He introduced himself. He described what he had done and why. And he said, I don't suppose there's any way I could get my paladin back. He was max level. He had great gear. And I just responded back to him. And I was like, hey, it's a pleasure to meet you. Always been a fan of your work. Your paladin is already back on the server waiting for you. And he was like, you've got to be kidding. And I was like, no, I'm not kidding. I was like, it wasn't lost. We kept all that information in backup, and it's already there. I already checked on it to make sure that it logs in okay and whatnot. All your stuff is on you, on your character. And he was like, hey, come down and take a tour of the studio. And I said, well, same is true. Like, bring all the people from Wildstorm and take a tour of Sony Online Entertainment. We ended up becoming friends. And that's how the EverQuest comic got drawn by Jim himself.
I have
That is so cool.
Jeff has a custom piece that Jim did for him. I have a piece. Yeah. He drew me as Batman once as a thank you for a thing that I did for him. And so
he drew Firiona Vie in her paladin outfit with her unicorn for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
If you guys have this art just laying around, I wouldn't be offended if some of it just got like leaked into some Discord somewhere. I don't know.
That's a good idea.
That'd be worth checking out. Yeah.
Jeff's got a thing that he can show you. We can get it to you here shortly.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, that would be cool. Speaking of famous. Ooh. Speaking of famous people, you also had a run-in with Ben Stein at one point, did you not?
He's grabbing this.
Oh, he's grabbing it right now? Yeah,
he's grabbing it right now.
So actually, we did have a run-in with Ben Stein. His son was playing a lot of EQ, and apparently he was doing poorly in school. And so Ben tried to use his influence as an actor to lobby the government here in California and the U.S. government to, consider online role-playing games as an addictive form of entertainment.
I don't think there's anybody here who would say that any of this is addictive, right, guys?
No.
We called it compelling. It's compelling entertainment.
It's compelling.
25 years of compelling.
I love that.
Look, I've been media trained, and we had a very good lawyer named Andy who was like, no, we don't ever use the A word. We always talk about compelling content.
Look, ultimately, I always looked at it this way. If they called me to Congress and asked me to testify, and they asked me the question, they swore me in and said, was this intentionally designed to be addictive? The answer to that question is no. It was not.
It was not.
It was intentionally designed to be extremely compelling entertainment. Now, take EverQuest out of the equation. There's a reason why video games have outstripped movies as the big entertainment earner, and that is immersive worlds and the ability to be entertained at your own leisure in a world that's a world or game that's not always the same. World of Warcraft, all the games that came after EverQuest, not just persistent world online games, but multiplayer games, et cetera, et cetera. That's something that we were able to help kick off.
That's crazy. I mean, you guys have lived such like, it's crazy to think about the wild lives that you've lived as game devs, right? Like, the people that you've met, the traveling that you've done, the, weird, bizarre circumstances you find yourself in, a couple of stories maybe you want to touch on, getting things booted up and the level that staffs had to commit to in order to get everything up and running, sleeping in the in the business there, in their cubes in some extent, and maybe not even having the resources to play the game on their own computers, and therefore borrowing some things that might not have been theirs.
Yeah. So, in fact, at one point in time, we were working on City of Mist, right? So long before anyone had ever seen it, the artist Vu Nguyen had created this zone. We had seen it in the editor. It looked beautiful. We're super excited about it. And back then, it took about 30 days for the machine that did the export process and rendering to run that operation. It had more RAM in it than any other machine that we had access to, and it sat in the office and open cube of one of the art directors. 30 days went by and the process failed. And I was like, hey, bitches, we're on the clock here. We're about to ship this expansion. I need to populate this zone. This place is huge. It's complicated. Like, I need this zone. Lickety split. Come on, give it to me. Another 2 weeks goes by and the process fails again. And I was like, okay, yeah, now you're really running me out of time. I'm starting to panic here. Like, my job is riding on this. I'm like a provisional producer right now. So I'm like starting to get nervous. And he's like, I just don't understand. Like, we've never had anything fail like this. And I was like, well, maybe it's a hardware failure. So we crack open the box and find half the RAM and the machine's gone. And, immediately we're like, what's going on? That machine sits really close to my department, customer service. And I was like, no, don't tell me. Sure enough, someone had stolen the RAM out of the machine and taken it home so that they could play EverQuest. Someone in the department came forward and said, hey, I think I know who it is. And sure enough, they were right. It was their roommate. He had taken the RAM and didn't even use it. He bound it up in duct tape and stuck it underneath their sink.
Yeah, in the bathroom to hide it. Yeah,
bathroom.
But his roommate was the head of internal affairs.
He was like,
how did you think you were going to get away with that?
He was like, I've noticed his behavior is somewhat suspicious lately.
And sure as shit, he found this like package of RAM in duct tape. Anyway,
needless to say, City of Mist was able to be exported, and we shipped the expansion on time.
That's absolutely wild.
I have a technical question that's been bugging me for a minute here, and it's wildly tangential, but I'll ask it anyway. The behavior of multi-questing, was that intended or was that an accident?
So almost all that stuff was emergent. Remember that the vast majority of people who architected the game not only weren't necessarily MMO players because they couldn't play UO, they didn't have time while they were working on EverQuest. They were mostly people who had either worked on or played single-player games, or at best had played in MUDs like Toril MUD back from the day. And so almost all that stuff was unintended or emergent behavior, unexpected.
I'm learning so much. I love emergent behavior. I love compelling gameplay. Like, you understand how much I'm committing to memory. Like, this is so good for me.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh no.
Well, most of the interactions that make THJ interesting is emergent behavior. Like, we didn't.
We were talking a couple weeks ago about the future of massively multiplayer gaming at my company, and very recently, while I was playing on the emulator, one of the guys in my group said, "Oh, look, a werewolf," and I was like, "Man, did you know that in early beta, if a werewolf bit you, you could contract lycanthropy. And they're like, yeah, I'm like, so what? It was like a dot that got on your character. And I was like, no, bitch, that's not at all how it worked. I was like, when you contracted lycanthropy, you turned into a werewolf and became a monster. And when you targeted other people, you couldn't see their name anymore. It just said meat. And
What?
you could, yes, and
Yep, that's true.
you could chase them down. You were a werewolf. You could chase them down and kill them and consume them. They were food. It was hilarious. They ended up pulling it out because people obviously would have abused the crap out of it. But I was sitting there. I was like level 22 in the Karanas, and back then you didn't have to run the fastest. You just had to run, not be the slowest person. And I was always the slowest person. So the freaking werewolf would kill me. But the one time it converted me into a lycanthrope, I ran around and rampaged through the zone. So you couldn't come into the Karanas because I was roaming around the zone border, eating people as they would cross the line.
Cata
I
and
have
Aporia,
an
can you
idea.
make this? Can you make this happen for us?
I have an idea.
No.
So there was a red tinged ring around the outside of the view frustrum, and everyone was meat. Oh, and every other monster was also meat.
I hear a Halloween event coming. I don't know. Anybody else?
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of suspecting as well.
Were either of you around for? There was a very brief period. I don't remember when it was where you could log in as a monster.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Monster
for
Play.
sure.
So Steve Clover, absolutely brilliant and an amazing contributor to EverQuest, and I believe he works on Pantheon now. Not to do
and really kind of under Steve's contribution to this game has really not been lauded in the way that it should have been.
Look, the name EverQuest comes from the programmer Steve Clover. He's the one who named the game. He's the one who named Kinos. He was responsible for gems, tons and tons of code. At times, he was the lead programmer, not for the entire game and all of its expansions until he left, but for several expansions, he was the lead programmer. And he also implemented the monster play. Among with tons of other stuff.
Yeah, hugely impactful to the game. Steve.
I wish that had stuck around.
Right? So
It was actually one of the coolest things that I experienced in EQ.
I found some of this art in my Discord recently. You guys want to see? You guys might not be watching the stream, but I have up the looks like pencil drawn artwork here.
That's Jim Lee's Firiona Vie in her paladin chainmail armor and her horse.
That's so fucking cool.
That is so fucking cool.
After I restored his character, he was like, hey, I have something for you. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, you didn't have to do anything. It's my job, restoring characters. He was like, no. He was like, I can't tell you how much I appreciated it. He was like, this was my ticket back to like playing the game with my friends again. And it means a lot to me. And he was like, come on out, let's go to lunch. So I brought some of the team members down to Wildstorm. And then he hands me this in a frame. It's sitting on my wall today. One of the most incredible things that I've ever gotten in association with EverQuest.
It's stunning. Like,
yeah.
Oof. I'm jelly.
And Jim, I don't know if you've ever seen Jim draw, but he envisions the whole thing in his mind. He doesn't draw this thing and then that piece and then it like emerges from the page. It's almost like he's a printer. He imagines the whole thing in his mind and then it just flows out of him at 1,000,000 miles a second. He's so fast and so detailed and so accurate with a complete vision of what he wants. Watching him draw it's like watching a superhuman do a thing that they were made to do. It's really something else.
He is an incredible talent, a genius.
A genius of a talent, inarguably.
Golly. And here we have the Firiona Vie. Looks like she might be.
That's a key.
Firiona Vie.
Yeah, that's the cover. That's the cover of TV Guide. There are very few actual pictures of Firiona Vie that don't belong to Daybreak. and this is one of them.
Good Lord, guys, there will be a VOD. I know that many of you will be looking at this picture later. Just saying.
I can't imagine why.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So you want to hear how we found that character?
Sure.
So, Cami, from Cami's bracelet, right? Very, very sought after and desirable on the Hero's Journey emulator right now, if you check the bazaar. So GM Cami, I first met that person at Gen Con. I was alone demoing EverQuest, and like 2 days had gone by. I'd been demoing the game alone in front of a couple of monitors, and I was starting to lose my voice because I had to scream because it was so loud. And a girl came up and said, "Hey, I play EverQuest. I could help you demo. I could like run the character, and you could turn and address the audience so you wouldn't have to scream." And I was like, "You wouldn't mind?" And she was like, no, I love playing and I'd be happy to do it. I was like, well, I'll buy you lunch, buy you dinner, et cetera, in return for your help. Well, that person became Esther the Tester, GM Cami, huge EverQuest player. She works still in the industry. In fact, she's I think the director of quality assurance at ArenaNet on Guild Wars 2. And so she and I are sitting there demoing EverQuest at Gen Con. And who walks up to me but Lara Croft? A girl, 2 guns on her hip, dark brown hair, the whole Lara Croft outfit. And she comes like crashing up next to me. And she's like, "I'm the girl on the cover of your box." And I was like, "Guess again, you're the girl on the cover of someone else's box, not my box." And she was like, no. Look, watch. And she pulls her hair up on top of her head like Firiona Vie. And I was like, holy shit, you are the girl on the cover of the box. I can't believe it. And so she has been in all the pictures of this girl that's on the screen right now. That was all that girl who Cami and I met at that Gen Con. She became our cover model.
That's awesome. That's fucking awesome.
Her name was Denise Harris.
Man.
That's so
And
cool.
suddenly Google search for Denise Harris just skyrocketed.
Right?
They're like, "Where's the booba?" Booba?
I lost contact with her years ago. I'm sure she's still out there, but maybe she got remarried. That's why I haven't been able to find her online. I would have loved to see her at later fanfares and stuff like that.
Now, Jeff, I have one more picture that's specifically for you that maybe you can tell us about. Do you have the stream up?
I do.
All right, maybe you can tell me about this guy right here.
Nice.
Nice. So yeah, EverQuest bought some interesting things over the years, and I think it was like 2000. I've always been a fan of Mad Max, and so I imported an Australian Ford and turned it into the Mad Max car. So like, if you were at Comic-Con when the Mad Max video game launched, you would have been able to sit in my car in front of the green screen. They rented it from me to take to Comic-Con. So that thing, that it's not this exact one, but like a replica of the car in the movie is sitting in the garage underneath me.
And when I tell you it is a sight to behold. Like when it starts, he has to squirt carburetor fluid into the intake so that it will start, and it blows flames out the side because of the amount of excess gas. And like it sounds like a jet engine taking off. It has no brakes. It's like a death trap. It's a death trap.
I took the last time I took a friend out in it, he was like, "Yeah, I've always wanted to go for a ride in your car." And I was like, "Yeah, right until you get in it. It's got so much power. Like every time you shift gears, like the back wheels break loose, fire sprays out of the zoomy exhaust pipes." And so we drove it to the gas station, and he got out of the car and called my wife on the phone to come pick him up. He wouldn't ride back home with me in it.
Does it really have no brakes?
It does have brakes, but it actually has very good brakes now. But
It didn't
back
have
in the
brakes for a
day,
long time.
it didn't have very good brakes. It has Willwood brakes, Willwood discs now, but it's been on Jay Leno's Garage and everything. We had fun with it.
That's awesome. So I got to ask you, completely on EQ related. Sorry, guys, but what do you think of the new movies?
I've enjoyed them. You know, yeah, I've enjoyed them. They've been entertaining, particularly Fury Road.
Oh yeah,
Big fan.
very good, awesome.
You know, Max kind of took a back seat, more or less, in the movie. It was a little bit of a tale about other things, but it was fun. You know, people flying around in cars, flamethrowers, guns, all good stuff.
Did you see the original in theater? I'm guessing.
Oh yeah.
Hell
Absolutely.
yeah. Hell yeah. Only way to watch that movie.
Yeah, I mean, like, I fell in love with that car. My friends and I argued up one side and down the other what it was. I mean, it was kind of before anything was revealed on the internet. And a friend of mine in Australia gathered together all the people who worked on the movie, found all of the parts that they used, like sourced like the nose cone and the spoilers and all that sort of other stuff, and built himself a replica. And he is the person who built me all the parts for my replica.
That's awesome. Wow. Well, I got to ask you, speaking of building things, I believe the acronym K6-2, little AMD, came up earlier today.
So this is a funny story. It was a story I wanted to make sure we told, but it's one of those sort of larger than life stories that people are like, surely that can't be how it happened. So I'm going to tell the story from the perspective of customer service, which is where I was working at the time. We started with an expansion had launched. I think it was just after Lucklin. Is that right, Jeff? I think it was with the DX7 upgrade when we shifted to when the engine got upgraded to DX7. Anyway, I can't exactly remember what the timing was, but we had launched some sort of engine upgrade, and we started getting reports randomly from people who were saying that they were falling to their death or their corpses were disappearing. They didn't know where they were going. They were zoning and then they would appear naked. Nothing was happening. They weren't dying, blah, blah, blah. Now, the number of times that happened where someone had like trained the zone with a zillion things behind them and they die as part of the transition and their corpses on the other side, it happened all the time. And so people would send in petitions and be like, oh, I died, through a bug, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, you look in the log and it's like, oh, they got hit by a bunch of stuff. And it happens that they were zoning, but the server didn't know that they were zoning and they died in the transition. It happened all the time. And so you just, explain it to them and, suggest that they move on and whatever else, get a res, however it goes. Well, we are getting these reports that are consistent that people are saying, no, that's not happening. I'm not dying. I'm not dying by anything. I'm just going through a zone with no train, no nothing. And I appear on the other side or at my bind point naked. We can't figure it out. We can't figure it out. We can't figure it out. We dig into the bottom of it, and there are some players, as they're zoning, that what we discover is that their Z location on the other side, when the zone server gets the new information for where that player is located on the other side of the zone border, for some reason, it is putting their Z at like 22,000 feet in the air. And so what's happening is they zone through, they are put 22,000 feet in the air, fall to their death, and then respawn at their bind point before they've even cleared the zone.
Oh.
And we can't figure out why are they 22,000 feet in the air. It's not happening to everyone. It's not happening consistently. It's not happening to any particular person every single time. It feels completely random. So we find a guy in chat who this is happening to. They had a front end chat program that you could log into that was occasionally staffed by GMs. And I find a guy that this is happening to. People are angry and screaming and screw you and fix your game, GM, and like just all of it.
I bought your expansion and it doesn't run.
Yeah, I pay your salary, like all of that. You get all of it, right? And I find this guy who's at Camp Pendleton. He's a Marine at Camp Pendleton who's having this problem. He's had it a couple of times. And John Smedley says, look, get me in one of those computers. Just get it here in the building and we'll figure out what's going on. Just get it here. And so I'm like, hey, would you be willing to drive your computer down from Camp Pendleton? So the guy loads his PC up and brings it down to the office. And the tech guys look at it, they pull his hard drive out, and John decided that they could repeat it on that guy's computer. They could make it happen again. And they did. And so that John's like, okay, we're going to keep this computer. We just got to get this guy to leave it with us. And I'm like, you're going to get this guy to just leave us his computer? Like, what are you going to do? And so John's like, well, call Jeff, the IT guy, and like get the best computer he's got and offer it to him. Just offer to swap him. We'll give him the best computer in the building, and he can take it home, and we'll just keep his crappy old one that's having this bug. And so that's exactly what we did. They swapped the hard drive out, and he got to leave with a brand new Falcon Northwest, top of the line, hot shit computer, and we got his janky old broken one. And what we found when we dug into it, and it was not me, I was not involved, but the tech folks dug into it. What they found was there was a floating point bug in AMD K6-2 processors. It was a processor level bug where
that AMD was not aware of.
Right. And we discovered as a result. And so they ended up having to patch for AMD K6-2 processors.
And thousands of EverQuest players died. They were sacrificed on the altar of the AMD K6-2 processor.
Floating point bug. Whoops. My bad.
Yeah, right. Hey, Cata, what are you going to do when that comes to THJ? Hey, there's no way that can be happening.
No, that's not real. I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical of this bug report. But yeah, there's a lot of design stuff you can tell by looking at like the packet structures and whatnot. Like the fact that the client told the server where it was rather than the server telling the client where it was.
Well, remember they had to build new protocols. Those engineers built RDP. Yeah. Like UDP and TCP/IP were not compatible with modern MMO design, and so they built their own protocol. Like they wrote their own network stack.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know why in UO you would walk into the bank at Britain, and 45 minutes later, your first footstep would land. It's because their whole network stack was based on TCP/IP.
Oh,
right.
That's wild.
And I'm not disparaging that at all. I'm not trying to throw that under the bus. It's just
you are, Cata, and we're tired of it. This is a great opportunity, though, to shout out Drake. So you talked about, like, what if this comes to THJ? So I just want to throw something out there. And it's not just Drake. There's a lot of people involved. But the problems that we have fixed as a community in terms of, EQ, EMU, and like, how do we get this to run on this? And how do we handle this? Anyone who's listening, if you go to our Discord, there are some wonderfully curated, frequently asked questions and optimizations, and an entire support forum dedicated to getting you answers for some of these weird things. It's incredible, the repository that we've created and the answers that are there for you. So don't hesitate to ask, and please don't hesitate to look, because people have spent a lot of time getting some really interesting setups to work. Like, just so for instance, we've got people playing this on Steam Decks. We've got people playing this on Mac. We've got people playing this like on TI-84s. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of insane. Like 10 different flavors of Linux. And I just wanted to shout that out because I think it's really, really cool that people have come together to make that happen.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think that this would be anywhere near as successful as it is if it weren't for the folks who have stepped up to volunteer their time to help.
That was true back then too.
Very.
It's always been true. The guides were the backbone of EverQuest's success. The game was too buggy otherwise. The guides were the people who volunteered their time. That was the backbone of what made it work, because they provided the insulation and the glue that kept the whole thing together when ultimately the game was, not the best architected, if I'm maybe so bold. It was what we had at the time, and people did the best that they could, and they did a great thing. But, we know better now.
Yeah, I mean, it's noteworthy that the game was developed for something like just under $7 million by a team of 35 people. And for the longest time, potentially still even now, it was the most profitable venture in the history of Sony as a corporation, including all Sony corporate operations in comparison to the amount of money invested in it.
Yeah, dollar for dollar return on investment. EverQuest was the most profitable investment that Sony ever made at the time I had left it to date, including the Walkman and all of its other technologies.
Yep, in the history of the company, going back to the day of its founding.
I mean,
a fact which the folks in Japan were aware of and deferential towards every time we interacted with them, up until we were no longer that, and then that attitude shifted. But certainly in the beginning, it was a tremendous amount of deference for the accomplishment that the team had done.
I don't even know what to say about that. The massive amount of blood, sweat, tears, soul that goes into a game like this. I mean, clearly, like just listening to the two of you guys talk about it, the dedication that goes into it, and then that kind of thing pays off. Earlier, we were kind of talking about sort of following the recipe, if you will, of how to create a game and how companies are doing it today compared to how they used to do it and how it shows in the outcome. And I think it speaks volumes. I mean, we were talking earlier about, how this game affects people personally, the relationships that have been built from this. And, once again, telling a tale of essentially a relatively small group of people banding together to make this beautiful thing, really dedicating their lives to this and having it explode into the massive game that we still play 25 years after the fact.
And honestly, one of the most amazing things about creating something that's never been created before, that's not a sequel of, or a derivative of, or a polished version of, is the number of naysayers that stand up and attempt to interpose themselves on the road toward success. Everyone who doesn't have a vision for what it is you're building, has never seen it before and can't imagine it, those people don't hesitate to refuse to fund, to try to avoid it, to naysay. The game that of as EverQuest almost did not happen because the company 989 Studios that was developing it was told by their parent that they had to drop all products and focus solely on console development. Tannerus and a number of other PC games were in development, including EQ. And Sony Corporate said, look, we need you to focus on PlayStation 2 development. So you need to divest yourself of all these other products. And so 989 Studios had the opportunity at that time to let the EverQuest team go and to cancel the project. But someone there felt that it had promise, and they decided they couldn't keep the project internal, but they decided to spin it out on its own. They agreed to pay for the development up until shipping. It had like 6 months left to go, so it wasn't a big amount of money, but they told the developers that they had to find their own money past development. And that means they had to find someone to fund the servers. They had to find somebody to fund customer service, et cetera, because they weren't going to pay for any of that. And so they spun John and Brad and the team out to form their own company. It was called Red Eye Interactive for a couple of weeks until they got a cease and desist. They changed their name to Variant. And literally, it was that close. It was one person at 989 Studios having some belief that the game bore some future potential promise, that they were willing to spend another $1 million on it to see it out the door. And that's what they did. And then another Sony entity swooped in and bought them on the spot. And in fact, that's the entity that was paying for customer service, Sony Online Entertainment.
That's
wild.
Yeah, absolutely wild.
And I mean, John bears a significant amount of the responsibility for making that happen. It was really John's leadership and vision that saved the game from oblivion.
Yeah, I mean, it was. Imagine, you're walking down the street, you take a step out into the street, and a bus goes speeding by and almost hits you. That almost happened to EverQuest.
Yeah, John, plus whoever it was at 99, who I don't know who it was, but it was those guys really are the ones who made it happen. It wouldn't happen without their intervention, direct, specific intervention in that moment.
I've heard enough stories about John to think that he's probably one of the most influential people in the history of video games as a concept, much less
it's true. It's true. EverQuest was his idea, and his idea solely to begin with. He doesn't accept credit for it, but I'm telling you, he deserves credit. I worked with the man for years, and I understand what went into the creation of EverQuest, the hiring of the people who created the game, the curation that he personally had to do to make sure that everything worked throughout those early foundational years. And look, I'll be the first to tell you, there were a lot of naysayers. I mean, I told you the story of the $75,000, the 75,000 number on the wall. I mean, come on, 75,000. That's a joke.
It's crazy. Yeah, they couldn't even wrap their head around the actual player base that could come and the money and the success. And then, we haven't really touched on it a whole lot other than initially, but the continuation of your career beyond your first stay with EverQuest, right? To go off into Sigil Games. We do have a commercial, so actually maybe I'll save this for after the commercial. We're about 10 seconds away from a commercial break. But when we come back, I'm going to touch on Sigil Games and the Vanguard saga.
Saga of Heroes.
One of my bigger regrets is not playing more Vanguard. I played at release and for some reason just didn't stick.
I didn't really
listen.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just crushing through content, devouring the game, getting to the point where there was no content that should have been there around level, I think 38 or 40.
Yeah.
And then trying to get creative with it. There are these guards around this city that technically if you could kill them, you could get XP from them. And then how do we do this? It's I think Psionicus is the answer. And getting the right mob with percent HP damage to go and kill guards so that you could level past the other players. That was so much fun. I know as developers, that was probably an awful feeling, but God, that was just so much fun.
You know the square hole video?
Yeah. Look, it's a triangle. Where does it go? Cata?
Goes in the square hole.
Yeah, I didn't get to play Vanguard myself, but I did hunt for lots of content and pictures and video, and just sifting through a lot of the stuff out there. I would actually say, and I'm curious, once we get back from the ad, to talk about some of the similarities of how MMOs sort of progressed at that point. And, the EverQuest 2 sort of launch and Vanguard there and abouts what they're about 2 to 3 years apart. I think, is that accurate?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. I think that, there's a lot of different stuff because I think also to touch on that stuff, the EverQuest Next type stuff, your mindset seems to be so ahead of the curve in your creation and your ideas of what can transpire in the MMO world. It just kind of blows my mind.
You know, honestly, I just think forward as a player, and there's tons of fiction out there for the idea of some sort of future online persistent world. The isekai anime where you put on a virtual helmet and you feel like you're actually in another world. The Ready Player Ones of the story, where Gregarious Games owns the license for Star Trek, Dungeons and Dragons, and all these famous intellectual properties, including Star Wars and Gundam and Donkey Kong, et cetera, and all these assets exist in one persistent online playable world. It's a spectacular idea. But even with things like the movie, where you can sit someone down and hand them Ernest Cline's book, force them to watch the movie, the number of people who can't see how the current crop of games could ever transition forward in that manner, it's basically everyone. All the gaming executives, all the people with their hand on the purse strings have a hard time believing in that sort of thing. The same thing happened with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I was literally in the Marvel office the day they got funding for
Jeff and I were
Cinematic
there.
Universe Phase 1.
We were there. Jeff and I were in the room when the phone call came in to Avi Arad funding the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We were sitting right there.
But prior to that, prior to Iron Man, people thought that superhero movies were cheesy, right? Well, though they're all cheesy. That's because that's the only one we've ever seen is a cheesy superhero movie. Like it's all tongue in cheek, like the Batman movie or whatever the case may be, until someone proves otherwise. Like John Smedley and his team proved that you could get people to go out and buy a 3D accelerated graphics card, a Voodoo 1 or a Voodoo 2, and that people cared and were interested in an online persistent world when everyone else said, well, why would you do that? That's just idiocy.
It's crazy.
Every time it's funny because every time I hear you talk about any type of coming together of different IPs, I just get so incredibly excited because, like you said, like the Ready Player One type of thing, where there's a singular hub, right, to which you can connect. This is who you are. This is your online presence, but you can take that online presence anywhere you want to go and adventure with your friends at the drop of a hat in any of these wonderful creations that people have made. Just the idea itself, it makes so much sense, and it's so exciting because it is like that is the future. Like that is literally the future. Like we saw early stages of it. There were some companies that came out with like cross-platform achievement systems. We saw a lot in some of the early Overwolf type stuff too, where like it didn't matter what game you were playing, and Steam does it for everything that they do, but like beyond just like if it's on Steam or if it's on Epic or if it's on this or if it has its own launcher, whatever it is, we have the technology today, right? Yeah, in some form of IAM, like you log in and here is the online world. Where do you want to adventure today? And you hop in, me, you, whoever, like, okay, we're going with this group today. What do we want to do? We're going here. And then having the interplay between games, right? Like, well, I did this in this game, so I unlocked this passive thing in this game, or I unlocked this skin for this in this game. But doing it in such a seamless way, that proposition just excites me so much. And I love hearing you talk about that, man.
So Aporia, when we're gonna talk about Vanguard, and so I'll give you a Vanguard story, kind of to kick this off. We licensed Unreal from Epic, Unreal 2.5 to make Vanguard. Epic was a tiny company at the time, and we had a milestone. We were about 6 months in, and we were struggling with a graphics thing. Our technical director was friends with the management at Unreal, and he called and said, hey, I really don't know how to solve this problem. Could you advise? And I got a phone call later that day from Tim Sweeney, and he said, hey, are you guys going to be working the weekend? And I was like, oh, you better believe we are. We've got this milestone coming up. And he was like, well, I'll be there on Friday afternoon. And I was like, what do you mean you'll be here? He was like, well, I'm familiar with this area of the code. And so I'll come out and help you over the course of the weekend if you're going to be there. And I'm like, yep, we'll be here. We're at your service. Tim shows up later Friday evening. We work all night and all through Saturday. It's like 2 a.m. Early Sunday morning, and Tim walks into my office and he's like, hey, can I raid your refrigerator? I'm like, sure, I'm getting hungry too. So we go in and start stealing my employees' lean cuisines. And he's like, I feel bad about this. I was like, dude, we'll replace them. It's no big deal. I was like, we'll keep the boxes. And I was like, man, why did you show up of all people? He was like, well, we're a small team. And I was like, yeah, but still, I was like, it's you, Tim Sweeney. I was like, the guy was famous back then. I was like, he could have sent someone else. And he was like, no, actually, I couldn't have. He said, because where I want to take this product requires that it can do the things that you're trying to get it to do, an online, persistent, seamless world. He said, I want Unreal to be a system of islands where people move from Star Trek to Star Wars to Dungeons and Dragons to Slick Willie's jackass FPS that he made for his buddies in his garage, et cetera, et cetera. Let's just start making shit up. He was like, I want Unreal to be all those things where you can take your gun and go anywhere in any universe that anyone imagines. Maybe your gun doesn't work in their universe, so you leave the gun behind, but you step through this online persistent, he didn't call it a metaverse, but that's the definition of the word. And then Ernest Cline wrote Ready Player One, where exactly that thing is theorized, where it happens in fiction. Now, the challenge is to try to get funding to create that game. I do believe, however, that is the future. And that's what I'm working toward.
It sounds like less of a game than a protocol.
Both. It's a protocol, and then
platform and game.
Yep, protocol, platform, and game, and it relies on people who are either IP owners, content creators, or holders to participate and say, my intellectual property or my world deserves a place in this burgeoning online universe where a man can climb into a Gundam, activate his beam sword, and chop an AT-AT in two.
Oh my God. I'm just like picturing that in my head. And it's just,
yep.
It's like, oh my God, the hair on my arm is standing up on end. I just can't imagine
it's
that.
Actually, no, I just saw in Twitch chat. It's actually exactly that's the way we talk about it at work. It's Roblox for adults. It's exactly how we talk about it.
Yeah, Roblox is an amazing game. Minecraft is an amazing game. I'll tell you, when we were making the argument for EverQuest Next and Landmark, and several people were like, oh, yeah, EverQuest was very forward thinking and et cetera, but we don't need any of that here. And I was like, very, very, very interesting body of ideas. Well, keep in mind that the company stood up because of an idea that no one had ever brought forward. And I'll tell you what I was told about user-generated content. Now, keep in mind, Minecraft, multi-billion-dollar property, Roblox, multi-billion-dollar property today. When I brought up user-generated content in 1999, you know what I was told? People come to games to play, to be entertained, not to work. What you're talking about is the work that a game developer does, and no one is going to want to do that. And I was like, bitch, please. Every single person on my team is a content creator. And if they weren't doing it for a salary, if they could do it as a hobby or do it for free, I firmly believe that they would. And then games like Minecraft came out and showed us that people who make nothing will rebuild the entirety of the Game of Thrones world in 1-to-1 scale for free.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to me because open world sandboxes are like one of the largest game genres in existence right now. And that's
Exactly.
literally going out and cutting trees and freaking building houses.
Yeah, I mean,
they
look
weren't until they were, though,
Skyrim
right?
mods.
Yeah, right.
Skyrim came out an eternity in the past, and yet the game remains vibrant today and is vibrantly and frequently modded. Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4, all the same thing. Hundreds of mods published for these games on a monthly basis, and they remain viable because of their community of content creators. I firmly believe that that the massively multiplayer games of the future are going to include a component for user-generated content where we can log into a world like the modern version of EverQuest that the emulator showcases, and we can create our own zone. We can populate it, fill it with quests, through drop-down menus and weapon costs based on the tier of the area, et cetera, where everything is constrained for us so that we can't break balance, we can't break the game, we can't create or put items or rewards or money in that doesn't belong. Because quite frankly, those same constraints need to be placed on the developers themselves. Because if they aren't, that's how you get things that aren't properly balanced. I shouldn't be able to go into Dagnors and just make shit up if that is a zone from level 13 to 25, for example.
What do you guys think about the introduction of AI, like learning AI in games? And just to reference like an article that I read recently where From Software's next Souls-like game is going to have bosses that literally have save files that learn from the last way you killed the boss and will accommodate and become a harder boss the next time you engage them, things like that.
It's a great question. The game that I'm working on right now features agentic AI and conversational AI, AI generated voices. And I can tell you, having experienced it firsthand, we created a robot mech, we gave it a brain and a personality. And, while we were seeking investment at one phase of our company's evolution, we fought the mech, and people were like, why is the mech talking like a girl? And we're like, well, that's her personality. To make her more personable, she's this terrifying looking death machine. She has the personality of a girl who's a serving waitress in a Japanese maid cafe. Her name is Nikuya-chan. And they're like, what the hell? And so they're talking through the mic, and Nikuya-chan is responding to them live during the fight. And they're like, wow, that's amazing. And she was like, thank you. I am amazing. Here, hold still while I stomp on you, et cetera, et cetera. She's like talking the entire time. And they're like, WTF, what is going on here? But that's not the amazing part of the story. We had taught her all about the game that we were making. We gave her this huge system of wiki entries where she understood about the game. And when we moved away from her because she WTF pwned us, we kind of ran away, and we were standing on the outskirts of her area, and our potential investors were asking us questions, and she started to respond. And they're like, why is her voice still going? And we're like, well, she's like a living human being, and she's in the meeting with us because we're standing here next to her. And they're like, well, she's answering questions about Avalon. And I was like, hold on, I'll shut up. Ask your questions. And she responded. And the investor, after hearing, they were like, holy shit, we're in. Count us in. We're done. It happened more than once during our run. Like literally, Nikuya-chan, the giant murder machine, got us investors. That's what I think about AI in games. It is transformational.
I'm going to call her the Uwu-chan bot.
Yeah,
Jesus.
that's accurate.
So
That's 100%
Because
accurate.
she would actually say "ooh" at the end. She would say,
Oh my God.
She'd be like, "Let me serve you a hot, steaming dish of destruction." Ooh woo.
Uwu.
Jesus.
I'm all of these conversations, like, I want to invest and I have no money to invest. I want to help. Like,
The time,
I'm just,
will come. The time will come when we reach out to the community and say, please, everyone, take a look at the product that we are trying to create and the advancements that we're hoping to bring to online persistent worlds for various reasons, to try to create the next generation of game beyond EverQuest, beyond World of Warcraft, beyond the ideas in Landmark and EverQuest Next. We're kind of building on that as a sort of springboard and platform. User-generated content.
We're explicitly trying to innovate here and not trying to be derivative. We're not going for what's safe and what's known. We're going for something that, look, MMOs back in the 90s attracted a certain kind of person, a pioneer, someone who's unafraid of doing things a little bit different or being told that what they're doing is wrong or incorrect or out of line with or out of sequence, or you need to be on consoles and you have to, if you're going to make a console game, you have to do it this way. And the EQ guys were like, no, we're going to do this way. This is our vision and we're going to go here. And we think that there's really going to be a market here. It attracts MMO development back then. Even the Dark Age of Camelot guys certainly fall in this category. Funcom, any of the early pioneers in MMOs, it required a steadfastness, a clarity of vision, and a surety, but also being willing to be a little bit daring and being willing to be a little bit dangerous and to push the envelope and say, look, I'm not interested in making more derivative games. Like, I have, in the intervening time, we talked about it very briefly, since my time at SOE, I've shipped about 130 games in my career. I've shipped console games, mobile games, Facebook games. I worked on, Hellgate London a little bit on the publishing side, and I worked on Soul Calibur 4, and I've worked on Street Fighter 4, and like Ace Combat 6, and like I've worked on all kinds of great Pac-Man. I got to work on really great franchises that are iconic, and I will tell you, the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning is doing something different. If I wanted to make more of those games, there's talent and there's effort that goes into them, but they are known quantities. There's a finish line that you're targeting. This is different. MMO development has always been different.
We owe it to you guys, right? There's only one reason why I'm having this conversation with you today. It's because you supported us as players. You believed in what we and our team had been able to create. You were the fuel, the propulsion. As we owed you the creation of a game and the curation of a world that you could fall in love with, so too do we owe you the effort to continue to innovate and create and to make online persistent worlds that amaze, that immerse, and that blow your mind. It cannot be. I will not have World of Warcraft 2 or EverQuest 4 or some derivative sequel of an existing product. It has to be something that pushes the boundaries, because these games, the entire genre, deserves to be pushed. It cries out for more advancement, for more amazing ideas to be included in these future products.
If you guys need any, community marketing, streaming, game testing, I would just like to volunteer Variety Void here and myself.
Yeah. You're the living, breathing reason why we are doing the things that we're doing. It would be our honor to reach out to you when the time comes to show you what it is that we're doing and to run it down for you. And I mean, quite honestly, the day will come when we step forward and we ask people to create content alongside us, where we open up a world and say, here's the world that we have curated, consider it an example. Now go forth and be fruitful. Make this world your own. Create content in it. Build a massive city on a hill. Make a dungeon that's 19 levels deep. Challenge us. Blow our minds. Use generative and agentic AI to power some of the amazing creations that are capable of being built in this new ultra high fidelity world. Unreal 5.5, super high resolution textures, characters, monsters, etc., etc.
Yeah,
Make
so I'm just
make
going to
the
go
next
ahead and
tech
step
hub.
in real quick right here because I feel the same way as so many people in chat. Okay, so Jeff, like, not that you were trying to sell me or anyone, but like, I'm a little too excited right now. And so how do people follow this? Like, how do we follow you, your company, Ozuri? Like, where do you want us looking when the time comes, or even before the time comes? Like, too excited.
That's a great question. So I think what we can do, correct me, Zach, if you don't agree, we can easily provide a bit of a reference here in the server for anyone who's interested in looking in the future. We can link you to some of the teaser trailer videos that we put up in the past. They were mostly for investment purposes, but there's a lot of substance in some of that stuff.
Yes,
I will
please.
literally create a channel for you in the Hero's Journey Discord to post anything you want about that. And we will give you rights and permissions to update it and do whatever you want. I am so excited right now.
That would be awesome. Quite honestly, there's some stuff coming in massively multiplayer games that I want to be able to talk to people directly about, not just in a form like this where kind of I'm the one talking, but I want to get people's feedback, because stuff like digital ownership, concepts that we had worked on going all the way back to 1999 while we were immersed in EverQuest, those things are coming. The idea that that the things that you possess in the game are your property. Your character is your property. His platinum is your property. That it doesn't belong to the people who run the server, that it belongs to you. If you want to, if you find an item that's worth 100,000 plat or $1,000, dude, I have a potion in Path of Exile that was worth $23,400 at one point in time in, equivalent exchange. If you want to sell that, that's your right. It belongs to you. There's a multi-billion-dollar a year industry in black market in-game transactions. People selling, buying gold, weapons from accounts from all massively multiplayer games. All of it illicit, all of it against the EULA and the terms of service for almost every game that's out there. And it is high time that end, in my opinion. And I'd love to talk to people about it in the long term.
Yeah, I would love to. I almost feel like that could be an entire campfire discussion unto itself.
Absolutely.
Because of the obviously there's like a political side that we certainly don't need to get into, but there's also a lot of people who maybe didn't have the greatest of intentions when creating some of these projects. And
absolutely.
So a lot of people
look at Diablo 3.
Yeah, when they hear some of this stuff, they immediately have this sort of apprehensive feeling about it. But I think that it would be important for people to really hear, what the plan is, what the long-term plan is, where some of these ideas are coming from, and how they would be maintained over time. Yeah.
Topic for another stream. We're happy to talk about all of our thoughts on that. But this is Jeff and I have been talking about this with other people, but the two of us have been talking about it for literally 25 years. I gave a talk at GDC in 2014 called UGC, the Golden Ticket. And that was 11 years ago. We still don't have anything that comes close to that promise. Still not. There's no reason for that.
Right. So transitioning from this topic, I would like for Cata and Aporia to answer a question that rolled through real quick, and then I got another question from chat for the two of you. Guys, where did you come from leading up to career-wise, leading up to creating THJ? What experience did you have? What did you learn along the way? How did you grow to create the THJ server?
Got it. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and kick off. So professionally, right. So started in tech, literally out of high school, got an internship for a local tech company because I had I was in computer class and bypassed our firewall and got called down to the principal's office where the IT director was, and basically was like, what did you do? How'd you get by it? Et cetera, et cetera. I told him, and he goes, listen, I cannot fix this. I can't stop people from doing it. If you promise not to tell anyone what you did, I will give you a job. I'm like, yeah, sweet. And from that point, I've jumped from bench tech to junior systems admin to systems admin, network admin, IT manager, IT director. Did that for a while, started my own consulting company. Most recently entered a COO role that I've been in for 4 years, that I actually just stepped out of to focus on consulting and spend more time, trying to do things like this. Consulting gives me the freedom to focus on something that I hope will one day lead into something like I want to be passionate about what I do every day, right? Like that's the ultimate goal that I hope this leads into, right? Like I hope this leads into something that I can do this level of creativity and this level of engagement, but getting paid a livable wage to do it, right? Like that's my goal. And when I started down this road, I actually, after I came back to Live EQ, I decided to give EQ a try. And I was on a server, and I'm not going to name who it was, but I was on a server, I was playing, I was having a good time, started giving some feedback, some suggestions. They loved it, they ate it up. I started helping them implement things. It was going really well. The server started getting more popular, got up to like 75 people, which for most EQEMU servers is massive. And there were people that joined that were donating. And he basically just kind of stopped listening to me and stopped listening to everything that had started to make this server popular. And basically anyone who donated was listened to, and whatever they wanted was implemented. And I was like, I can't be a part of this. Like, this is not what it's supposed to be. So I stopped, dangerous. And yeah, and so I stopped, and I literally, you can still go, and this is a fun fact. If you go to the EQEMU forums, like 3 years ago, there's a post that I made going, this is who I am. This is how much money I have. I need someone to help me make my own server, or at least teach me how to do it. Because I want my EverQuest. Like I want to be able to play the game that I want to play in the way that I want to play it, and let's do it, right? So that kicked off the Retribution server, which at its peak had over 400 concurrent users, which was, again, in EQEMU world, massive. Had so much fun doing it. It was a 3-box server, but a lot of the things that people love about this existed there, right? So the different tiers of gear, the way that you interact with the world in a lot of ways, the DZs, a lot of the database work and foundational stuff, like we did that in Ret, right? And then this will be a good lead into Cata. So while I'm deving Ret, which ended up taking like all of my time, I started looking for something to do, like to just kind of get my mind off. I'm like, I'm going to check out some other EMU servers. I hopped around probably 30 EMU servers, came across one called Firelight. And I hop in, there's no tutorial, there's nothing telling you what's different, what's this, what's that. And I'm like, okay, I'm hopping around, I'm looking, I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. Like, what are these NPCs? So I'm just hailing these random NPCs. What do they do? What is it? Like, oh, you can do what? There's item levels. Yeah, well, I have item levels and retribution. It's like, oh man, but there's more stuff to this. What is this? And so as I'm adventuring through this world, I'm finding all these really cool systems that are just kind of disjointed, right? Like they're just kind of there, but they're super cool. And I'm like, God, this is kind of wild. So I start playing there, and I'm playing there for about 2 weeks. And I'm really enjoying myself, right? Past a few people that were already playing on the server, really proud of myself. I'm like, I'm going to be the best here. And then one day I go to log in, and the game is like completely changed. And I'm like, hold on. So I log into Discord, I message Cata, and I'm like, hey, what's the deal, dude? And he's like, oh, well, this is just, my sandbox to test stuff and X, Y, and Z. And I'm trying to do this and that. And he's like, why? What did you like? What didn't you like? And so we start talking, and I made a comment, and I was like, honestly, if you remove this, and this, put an actual tutorial in the game, and then combined it with all this type of stuff, it would be amazing. And he's like, well, you're talking like someone who's done this before. And I'm like, okay, fair play. I was like, so I run Retribution. And he goes, no way, you run Retribution? He's like, I played there, I loved it. I'm like, yeah, man. And we start talking, and then it was like, hey, so Cat, you've got like 6 people playing here. I've got a ton of people playing by comparison. If you brought all this awesome stuff to Ret, that would be incredible. And so he's like, oh, well, I want to do this and that. So we started talking, we started collabing. He came over to help dev on Ret. He helped launch the Retribution Season 1, which was a huge success. And then once that was done, we started alpha testing the hero's journey and refining the multi-classing system and a lot of the systems that people have come to love. And it was it worked so well, right? Like the combining of all these ideas, it was awesome. And I think I may have told some of Cata's story, but yeah, that leads us to here.
That's a great origin story.
Thank you.
All superheroes have one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, I think the question was asked about like professional career. I do systems admin. Not a software developer by profession. I just started hacking on this kind of out of spite. Honestly, I will also not name names, but there was a server who the operator of it really rubbed me the wrong way in a number of different ways. And so I said, I'm going to go make my own server. Y'all know the line. So I started working on a few like concepts and never had a lot of players, just sort of tried stuff. I've had several people who stuck around with me for the last, I guess, 3 years or so that I was working on the first few iterations of Firelight. The last one I stumbled on the idea of multi-classing, and it was actually meant to work more like the job system from Final Fantasy, but with benefits of being able to carry over some of the stuff between your classes that weren't active. But no one actually used it that way. So when we started working on THJ, I started over on the multi-classing system from scratch and tried to make it more of this system where there was no like preferential class selection, and tried to keep some of my more wacky and wild mechanical ideas in line with things that are actually fun to play with rather than just sort of have God mode. And here we are.
It's the most fun that I've ever had playing EverQuest.
Oh, Jesus.
Damn.
True. I was sitting here counting how long we've been doing the interview in the number of AA that my character could otherwise have been earning.
I've been gaming the entire time. I've gotten almost 700 AAs since we've been doing this. So
that's awesome.
Oh, would you stop?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I feel like the AA rate will be a little bit over.
You're gonna make Cata nerf XP live on stream, please.
Oh, sorry, did I say 700? I meant 400. I'm sorry.
I'll power level you guys later. Shh. It's okay. Shh.
Hey, I do want to take a second real quick though, because I've been trying to work it in, but this is very important and I don't want to forget. So we talk about the EQ Emu project, and Cata and I are so incredibly humbled by the response that we've received, and we have obviously made some good choices. However, it's important to note that EQ Emu itself has been around for like 20 years, and the number of contributors to this project over the years is significant. right? And it's not just the coders themselves, right? It's the players that are playing on these servers that are giving feedback, good feedback, helpful feedback, that these server ops then incorporate into their server. And what a lot of people don't understand, like one of the reasons why we do things the way that we do, like I know people complain about downtime and, oh, why did we do this? Why did we do that? So like one of the merges that we just did, that Cata just executed, I mean, wonderfully, brought us up to mainline master, right? So what that does is it allows not only us to benefit from what the EQ-EMU community has done, but it allows a lot of what we've done to go back to the EQ-EMU community. And it's very important because we would not have this server if not for the contributions of thousands of people over the last 20 years, right? And so while we have done some real
earlier, I don't remember who it was either you or Cata said something that's very important to me, that you stand upon the shoulders of giants. I can tell you that the EverQuest Next Landmark Wiki, at the very top, the header of the wiki said, EverQuest Next Landmark, we stand upon the shoulders of giants. It's an incredible affirmation that the work that you've done, in the case of our work on EverQuest, it was standing on the shoulders of giants. The people who had created the engine, the authors who had painted pictures of dragons that inspired us when we were kids, et cetera, et cetera. All of that stuff is fuel for us as we move forward. Affirmation for the people who have come before us, for the efforts that they've put in, development teams, of the modern era, present and past, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and there's been a number of developers who have worked on EQ who have then gone on to carry the torch even privately. Guys like Sean Lord, who have continued to try to carry the EQ spirit forward and have done so for many, many years. There's a lot of folks out there who put a lot of effort in and continue to put effort in. It's been a tremendous community of people, developers, players, enthusiasts who have managed to keep this property alive, and not just alive, but now, as you can see, growing.
Yeah,
100%.
I got a little bit of grief about being overly humble earlier, and I don't see it as that. I want to be absolutely clear. I don't think that I personally have made a huge contribution to EQ Emulator. The things that make THJ special are relatively small changes in the grand scheme of things. And almost all of them I was only able to execute because of other people doing most of the work already. It's just synthesis at this point.
And not only that,
but that is the work, man. That is the work. The work isn't in understanding the technology. The work is in understanding how to put it together to a specific end, to create entertainment for people. And this isn't software development. This is game development. Game development is all of the difficulty and the complexity of software development multiplied by the subjectivity of art. And that last part is the part that gets left by so many folks. The subjectivity of the entertainment experience is the thing that you have to do. It is the synthesis, is the magic. That is the magic of being a game developer. So don't sell yourself short. What you're doing is the core of game development. It is the synthesis.
I mean, if you had the opportunity, as I've had, to track Zack's career, I can tell you that there were years where at GDC, you remember the Jabba the Hutt scene in Star Wars, where Zack would sit down at a table and it was like the Jabba the Hutt.
I don't know where. Look, I do not like the comparison to Jabba the Hutt. I do not know where this story is going, but Jabba the Hutt, I do not appreciate
that. he spoke botchy, and so no. I mean, but the thing is, Zack controlled. At Namco Bandai and at Capcom, he controlled the purse strings for hundreds of products in development at one point in time, and his perspective on what is good about game development and what it entails couldn't be given with more perspective from his experience in the industry. if he says you're developing a game, you are definitely developing a game and doing a good job of it.
I appreciate that, y'all.
Yeah, you just made like his lifetime and mine.
Oh,
And
Bochuda.
can someone soundboard that, please? Oh, that's awesome. It's and the other thing too, like it's beyond the synthesis, but you know we've talked before, and we talk about a production level experience and what goes into that, and beyond even the feel of the game is also the interaction with the players. And I get made fun of a lot, right? Because every single person that joins Discord, I literally wave at them, and like I get messages from people who just join, and connecting with people. And like we said before, like a lot of our favorite expansions are because of the experiences that we had. Being able to like, oh man, I lost this, or, you know, like, oh I accidentally deleted my character, or, you know, whatever those things are, like having the tools to fix issues that directly impact people that might not seem like big deals is such an important thing. It's such an important thing. And being able to do that on this server, right, makes it feel like a production level experience. And that's so important. And I can't stress that enough, because there's so many people, like there are people in the stream right now that run their own servers and they're here supporting us, and it's wonderful. But I say that to all of them. Like if you want people to have fun on your server, focus on letting them have fun. Focus on, like, if someone comes to you with you know a suggestion, don't just shoot it down. Like, listen to it and tell them why you don't like it. Because engaging with those things, you actually think it through and like, oh man, you know what? Maybe not that, but that gives me an idea, and that's really cool.
Exactly. That's exactly that's the magic. You have to orient yourself, and this is the thing I sort of led with sort of the thing that makes Jeff really good at his job is he has an unerring orientation towards the player experience. What is the experience that you want to present? What is entertainment? What is fun? How do you get to fun? And yeah, okay, maybe that's not in the vision, and maybe it's not on the plan, and maybe it's not in the project schedule. But if this is the right decision, if this is the right thing, then that's what we need to do. Because ultimately, this is all in service to entertainment. It isn't a software product for its own sake. It has to serve people. And if you forget that you are serving people, you will have a game with no players.
I try to think about it as if I was if you're a dungeon master, you spend whatever time is necessary in preparation for your Friday night, module that you're going to run. That could be 8 hours over the course of a week, but you do it in service of the entertainment that you're providing to your D&D group on the weekend. I try to look at it on a macro scale and say, as MMO developers, we're basically the game master for, in EQ terms, 450,000 people. And we owe them that quality entertainment. And we conduct and comport ourselves, build our projects, come up with ideas, ratify what's good, shit can what's terrible, and fix the bugs, et cetera, with all that stuff in mind.
Not to break this up, but it sounds like Cata might have to take off, and I just want to give him an opportunity to say goodbye and say his two piece before walking out.
Yeah, I got some stuff going on here, newborn problems I gotta go take care of, but it's been a great time. Thank you so much for everyone who joined us. Azuri, Jeff, thanks for having this conversation with us.
Thanks, Cata. It's always a pleasure.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us, Cata. I know you've got a lot going on. Appreciate you being here.
Love you, Cata.
Glad you found your cat.
Yeah, right. Best news all day. Cata found his cat.
Yep. Best news all day.
So we did get one other question in chat here asking, people would like to hear your take on Pantheon, given how close to old school EQ it is.
That's a great question. A lot of friends of mine were involved in the sort of inception of Pantheon, and some of the people that I've worked with have put a massive amount of time and effort into it. Steve Clover amongst them. I like it as an endeavor, and I think that this sort of endeavor is incredibly important to our craft. Big games, small games, people who care about delivering, the EverQuest style experience. I mean, there's so many developers over the years who no longer have access to influence the original EverQuest experience itself. This was a perfect opportunity for them to gather together and continue to try to pursue their vision. Ultimately, that's what's going to make the entire industry and all genres associated with persistent worlds better. And so I congratulate them for launching. They deserve whatever success they're able to eke out of that endeavor, for certain.
I know this is kind of crazy because everybody's at like very different stages of their life and everybody's kind of gone off to do their own thing. But has there ever been like a time where you guys are sitting around the bar or like, talking over Discord where you're like, man, let's get the gang back together, Blues Brothers style and try to create some new amazing EverQuest, or not even EverQuest, but like just some totally new thing? Even
it would be exceedingly hard to assemble the group that is as disparate as all of that. We do work with like one of the guys, Ryan Barker, is on our team. He's one of the EQ guys. He's part of the company that Jeff and this is the third company that Jeff and I have worked at together. And so there's quite a few folks that are sort of either tangentially or similarly related, but getting the whole group back together, there was a lot of people who touched the game over the years, and it's kind of hard to say what the group really is. But lots of us have worked together in many different companies over the years, and you sort of drift in and drift out, and you see 3 or 4 of them are at this company, and they start a thing, and off it goes, and then there's 2 over here and 5 over there, but I don't think that it's really practical for something at that scale, because really modern game development, you're not talking about 35 people anymore. You're talking at least 60 or 70. And, that it's just ungainly at that point. It's just hard.
It's a great question though. And so the project that we're working on right now, and going all the way back to EverQuest Next and Landmark, a lot of times you have to get closer to the finish line before it comes to the attention of people who you may have worked with in the past. Who then have the opportunity to reach out to you again. In fact, one of the devs that we worked on very advanced AI concepts for EverQuest Next was one of the first people that I reached out when we stood up Avalon, because I knew that he and I shared a long-term vision for the existence of more powerful AI in online persistent worlds. He joined us and initially contributed spectacular ideas to the project that we're working on right now, and his input was instrumental during EverQuest Next and Landmark. And so we're going to continue working on the game that we're working on today, and when we come to the attention of people that we've worked with in the past, if the opportunity permits and we've got the resources, we definitely consider working with those folks again to
Jeff,
get the band back together, as you say.
There was a term that was used when EverQuest Next was announced, and sort of the structure of system, because it was, I almost don't want to quote this because it, or even paraphrase, because I wouldn't do it justice, but essentially everything you do in the world, physically, socially, and otherwise, was going to have this sort of butterfly effect on the rest of the game. And there was a term that was used for this, and I can't remember the term off the top of my head. But I remember being so psyched watching the descriptions and the just all of the different ideas that were coming to EverQuest Next.
And so you want to hear something crazy? It wasn't an EverQuest Next idea. the functionality that you're talking about, what it amounted to was a living, breathing world where the entities inside it had their own sort of ecology, where if you didn't destroy the orc tribes that spawned in the northeastern corner of the zone, that they would build larger villages and expand and potentially threaten the human village at the other end of the zone. And as a player, you could intervene either on behalf of the humans or on behalf of the orcs, and that the game would evolve and change in each individual server based on players' collective decisions about how the world was going to be managed. But that actually is an idea that comes from Ultima Online. Unfortunately, when they stood up this living, breathing ecology, they couldn't leave it running on the server because it brought their operations to their knees. Their TCP/IP network stack and the load on the servers just couldn't manage the fact that, like in this case, the wolves were overpopulating because people had destroyed the predators that were feasting on the wolves, the gazers or the drakes that were wandering around in the zone. And so, like, I experienced Ultima Online when that functionality was active. It was a brilliant idea on the part of Ralph Koster, and EverQuest Next was merely building on that concept, incorporating it into Norrath and making it a little more relevant. Quite honestly, I was thinking of World of Warcraft and, being out in the various zones where the starting races were located, and thinking, what would happen if this was more like an RTS, where there were supply lines between villages and non-player characters actually had goals and the world wasn't static.
We see a little bit of this in Lucklin with some of the war mechanisms, right?
Precisely the case. And the Coldane Ring War is a good example.
Yeah.
Where there are three factions played off against one another, based on individual choice. Some very interesting things can happen in the world. What we postulated was something a little more spectacular and permanent, where the shape of a server and the how an individual zone or area would be populated could change based on the players' activities and their collective interests.
Man, like all the different ideas that you guys have discussed. I mean, the new game you're working on, the ideas that existed, EverQuest Next, some of the things that were implemented, and some of the things that had to be taken out of original EverQuest are, meat. I mean, oh my God, yes, meat. Or, actually, we didn't really get into it too much, but some of the bandwidth limitations that you ran into in the original EverQuest and its original inception of having the nulls actually communicate back and forth with other nulls and shouting commands and having them all sort of interact and be more of a living, active member of the game.
The thing about the Split Paw invasion, it's a great story. There was a young guy who was on the customer service team by the name of Jason Polk. He was the very first person who got into the apprentice program that we created. We knew we needed a live team.
His name was Dovasir. So the Dovasir's, all of the gear, it's named for him.
Yep.
Oh, and so, nice.
Yep. That's Dovasir. He was apprenticed to someone on the development team because we needed a live team. We needed people who cared about the game, who understood what it meant to serve the customer and to create this entertainment. We took a small handful of people. We attached them to developers to learn what they could teach of their craft. And Jason Polk went into the database and he created the Split Paw invasion. He demoed it for me at his desk in customer service after hours one night. And I was like, it's absolutely incredible. We've never seen anything like it in the game. Nothing like this has ever even been conceived by the previous development team. Let me go get Brad and Smed. He demoed to them. They took him away. And they brought him back, and they said, "Hey, he's moving over to the development team. We just hired him as a full-time developer. He's the first member of the EQ Live team." That guy ended up being one of the most talented all-around game developers that I've ever worked with.
Me too. Me too.
Every single epic weapon in the game, every single one, is in the game because of him. Had it not been for him, none of them would have been able to be added to the game. He is the one who went in and learned how to get particle effects attached to weapons, coordinated all that with our newer EQ Live programmers like Todd Schmidt. And he not only wrote quests, he implemented them. He created quests and taught other people how to do amazing things like the Coldane Ring War, which was based on the work that he did, his personal inspiration. He also went in and modeled. He did tons of 3D models throughout Velious, non-player characters, monsters, weapons, things of that.
He wrote piles of code. He was the producer for a while. He wrote code. That man could do anything. He was all around about. He could do anything. He could do all the jobs, and he came out of customer service. He was a GM.
He was one of the most valuable individual contributors that I've ever worked with in my entire career.
I would say the same for me.
You hear that, Drake? You're learning how to code next.
There was never
It's all you, buddy.
Yeah, get your shit together, Drake. Come on. Man, I just like just hearing about this stuff just makes me like it just gets me so excited. I wish I could have been in this world growing up and like in my career in life. It's just, I don't know. It's like a dream. How can it be real?
Yeah, these stories are absolutely fantastic. And I have to officially thank you both again, not only for being here with us tonight, but literally for being here and playing the game. Like you talk about the fuel that the players add, and it's incredible to me that you are one of those players adding to our current fuel, and it means the world, and it's awesome on levels that I really can't express. So thank you.
Let me tell you this. I found the server through a subreddit post, and I told Jeff about it, and we both created characters and hadn't told the other ones what we were doing yet. And then we both donated without telling the other one because we both saw in it genius. We both saw it independently of one another. And then when we got together, I was like, I saw in the supporter chat, I was like, oh, there's a story, and that story is actually about me. I was at that event, and that was sort of the genesis of sort of this campfire. But we both independently saw the value that you were creating for this franchise and felt compelled to financially support it. Compelled.
Amazing.
It was that riveting. Independently.
That's so cool.
I was he and I were both at an offsite in New Orleans last week. And once we got our work done, we went out as a team for dinner. Occasionally we'd go out for a drink afterwards, and people were like, what do you want to do? You want to wander around New Orleans? I was like, no, actually I want to get back to my hotel room, log in on my laptop and play some EQ.
Stop.
That is what happened. That is what happened.
Stop.
Compelling content.
We both did that and had to get Drake to give us an IP exception because otherwise we were getting bounced off the server because we were staying in the same hotel.
I can't.
Compelling content.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
It's amazing stuff. There's a reason why video games have overtaken Hollywood in earning potential. It's because of this power, right? The fact that in an online community, you have people care about you, people who you care about. When you log in, they ask you how your day was. When your cat is lost, they care about the fact that you find it again. They bleed for you. They they move with you through your life, and together as a community they can accomplish amazing things. The world has yet to see the largest massively multiplayer game. The world has yet to see the effect of 400,000 people in a distributed organization like a guild act as a societal force to get someone elected or to prevent someone from being elected, things of that nature, to change the laws of their country, et cetera, et cetera. But I tell you, these aren't fantasies of mine. That's the stuff that people are writing about in novels of the potential future. Futurists who see the power of what's happening in online games today. And that's what we have been working for the last 25 years to continue to try to realize.
That's just incredible. I was invited to a roundtable with a foremost thought leader in neuroethics. Her name is Lee the Firiona Vie, and a lot of what she's talking about, I feel, is very applicable to the future of gaming, right? So she wrote a book called The Battle for Your Brain. And it's just really, it's very exciting to think about the potential of gaming worlds like we've discussed previously, but also how everything is so interconnected and how the decisions eventually that we make in games will almost directly impact our real life. And it's a very exciting time to be, I'm going to say, in this field, even though tangentially, but like, it's a very exciting time to be doing this type of thing.
No, I'm sorry. Stop. No, not tangentially. You are in this field. Period. Full stop.
Absolutely true. All content creators, that's all content creators, all people who are working on projects like this, they're all the wave of the future.
This is how this is going. This is the nature of game development. You don't self-deprecation. I get that, you humble, etc. But like, man, you are every bit a game developer. You have every bit of a claim to being a game developer and building the future of games in this way. You have absolutely claim that.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm just going to own that. I'm going to own it.
You should.
Yar.
Yeah, you really should.
Yar. But no, really, like, I'm so excited, guys. This is all fantastic.
You have thousands of concurrent players. You have way more success than lots and lots and lots of people who claim to be game developers. I promise.
The most successful emulated server ever. This server, look at the people that you're pulling together. Look at the freaking massive amount of people who just came to hear you guys talk. Like, dude, every time I talk to you guys, and when I'm telling you, like, I don't want to waste your time because I know the wizards are hard at work. I know Cata is locked away in the closet somewhere, just pounding away at a keyboard. I know you're out there freaking reaching out to all kinds of people, getting things moved, making sure that Cat is staying on task and SKs aren't getting nerfed, and going through and just smoothing things out, beating Drake up in some other back room. I just got to tell you, it is a magical, amazing thing that you guys are creating. And I am not the golden god that our guests are, but I certainly appreciate everything that you do, all the time you put in, all the wife aggro you likely deal with. I mean, it's just, please don't stop. Keep it coming.
You got it. I mean, it's not for nothing. We're planning a year into the future at this point. So that's one thing that I from the very beginning, I want our players to know that short of something completely out of our control, this is not going anywhere, right? From the backups that we take every hour to the ways in which we run our server, like this is an experience that we want to continue to be here for you. And that's very important to me, because when I play on that is the one thing, right, about user generated content, depending on who owns it, who can shut it down, right? Like, when can it go away? That's
Exactly.
always something, right? Like that's a concern of mine. Like when I was playing on some of these smaller servers where it's like, oh, it could just disappear one day. That's one thing that I want to take out of anyone's mind, right? Like we have as many fail safes as we can possibly have in place to ensure the fidelity of data of what you have worked for. And that's very important to me.
Well said.
Guys,
And that, folks, is the sentiment of a game developer.
there you go. I think at this point we're talking about winding this down. Would anybody like to say anything? Would anybody like to get anything out? Any last words from any of our guests?
For my part, it's been an honor to be here. It's been an honor to have played this game, to have been given the opportunity to work on it, and to meet all the amazing players over the years and other game developers. I hope to be at it for the next 25 years. Thank you.
I am humbled to have been able to participate in the success of this game. My contribution was very small compared to many of the people, some of whom I believe are actually listening to the stream. And there are so many people who get to claim some part of the success of this product. It was a product made through community, and it's good to see that it continues to be made through community.
I love that.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you guys so much for taking time out of farming AA and playing THW to really spend time and hang out with us and answer our questions and share your time and experience with the community. Thank you, Void. I know you had to end your stream a little early or raid into this. And thank you, Aporia. And I know Cata's not here, but thank you, Cata, for all the time you guys took away. You guys just dropped a huge patch, and very clean patch, actually, might add to that. Knock on wood.
Oh, no. Believe me, that's the one thing about having this many players. If there's a bug, we know about it pretty quick.
Yeah, it happens real fast. That's how it always has been.
Floating point error.
Yeah, floating point error. In the old days, it was the boats. The boats were the canary in the coal mine.
Oh,
if the
Jesus.
boats broke, something was really messed up in the back end.
Fucking boats.
In fact, I'll tell you very briefly. If somebody broke the build in the old days, if you committed something and it made it past test server, what would happen in the development pit once we realized what had occurred? What would happen is someone would play the Sanford and Son theme song, womp 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 up, womp 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 up, womp up womp, and it was the like womp womp sound of somebody has screwed the build. And so now I will forever have that association with that song for having screwed up the build. So if you should ever happen to mess the build up, Cata or Aporia, you can just play that song and know that you're standing on the shoulders of maybe not quite giants, but fairly tall people.
Standing on the shoulders of junkyard owners.
Right.
Oh, I love it. You know what? I really, okay, chat, yes. Because this was such a successful event, I have just turned on a 50% XP bonus for the rest of the weekend. Get it, y'all.
Ooh, boy.
Yeah. Hell yeah, let's go.
Daddy ain't sleeping tonight.
Excuse me, I have some AA to grind.
Yes.
Guys, we gotta end this stream.
Yeah.
I got some things to do over here.
Oh no, technical issues. Ah.
Why'd you say it that way?
My refrigerator's running. Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Have a wonderful night.
Great stream, great hosting, and great people in chat.
Thank you very much. Guys, love you all. You guys are all sexy human beings. Thank you for coming and checking this out. I will be making a VOD for all of you. we will be getting some things together so that all you guys can get a hold of this. If you didn't catch it all, you will be able to see it on my YouTube, which is right here. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button. Come on, hit it. Subscribe, follow. I love you all. Thank you so very much. You guys are all amazing. I hope to see you in game. Take it easy. Love you. Bye.